We have a guest speaker for his name is Ian Tyson. He's been a professional speaker since 1989. He performed for tens of thousands of people each year at hundreds of schools, conferences, and businesses across North America. Ian is a proud father of two grown kids and makes his home in St. Thomas, Ontario. Ian is a seasoned facilitator and works with clients in leadership, optimism, and resilience across the US and Canada. He published his book, Hooray for Everything, the Optimist Manifesto in 2013. He is all about positivity and intention and wears his heart on his sleeve in every presentation. Also a stand-up comic, Ian was named the funniest person in London, Ontario. At the 2003 Canadian Comedy Awards and Festival, an avid home cook, Ian recently appeared on the Food Network show Wall of Chefs in 2009. While celebrating 20 years as a speaker, Ian embarked on a special cross-Canada speaking tour to raise money for charity and film a tour documentary. He drove from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria, British Columbia through the month of September 2009. He did 30 shows in 30 days, covering 10,000 kilometers. And please give a warm welcome to Ian Tyson.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I hope everybody can see me. I can only see the slide of me there, so I don't know if I'm spotlighted or not. I mean, hopefully we shall see. Friends, it's great to be with you here virtually today. I mean, this is the way we're doing things, but I don't know if I would have been able to, fly all the way out to Portland for this event anyway. So it's great. I get to be with you now this way. It's fantastic. I got to say, I do miss that energy and that excitement of an audience, but it's great that we get to do this way. I'm kind of having a one-on-one conversation with each of you, which is kind of cool too. As someone who's been a speaker for almost 32 years now, I will say I've kind of become a student of the energy that people put out. And when I'm talking about energy, I mean the kind of thing where, when somebody walks into a room, they don't even have to say a word and you immediately go, oh, somebody's in a bad mood. Like, and you just go, hey, like, yikes. Or maybe it's that, they don't have to say a word and you're like, I'll have having, I just want to hang out with them. They seem in a great mood. That's awesome. Most of you, being involved in Key Club and leadership, you're probably those kind of people. But that's the kind of energy I'm talking about. There's one particular kind of energy that I love more than any other, which is anticipation, excitement. Something awesome is about to go down and you're pumped. Nothing better. Like you're climbing up the first hill on a roller coaster, just click, click, click in your way. And you're like, yes, except for a couple of your faces I can see going, no, shut up. No roller coasters. But anyway, or maybe you're on a plane about to go on a vacation somewhere, plane's about to take off, something like that. Or in the before times when, you're at a concert and everybody's about to lose their mind, the band's coming out, everybody's screaming and yelling, that kind of excitement. But what I would say is there is a next level. There is a fifth gear to that kind of excitement that all of us have forgotten about. And I was reminded of this next level energy not too long ago while doing a speaking tour at high schools. Now, I've been speaking at high schools for 32 years. I do live in Canada, but I travel around the US and around the world but I was doing a tour in Canada in Saskatchewan in February. So for those of you who don't know Canadian geography, Saskatchewan in February, flat, white, Arctic cold, nothing to do. Not exactly grand excitement that you would think while doing this speaking tour. I was in a little wee tiny town in rural Saskatchewan called Turtleford. That was the name of the town. Now, I didn't speak at Turtleford Elementary. I didn't speak at Turtleford Middle School. I didn't speak at Turtleford High. I spoke at Turtleford School. Period. End of sentence. Kindergarten through grade 12, all in the same building. Grand total number of students the year I was there, 134. K to 12. Their graduating class, their seniors, 3. 2 guys, 1 girl. I don't care who you are. That prom's going to suck, okay? Like, seriously, I got to talk to the senior class, all 3 of them for a minute. And I was like, I talked to the girl and I went, so what do you flip a coin for prom? And she went, no, I don't like either of them. And they're like, yeah, she's right. We're terrible, but hilariously small. So now I'm only speaking, normally grade 7 to 12 students. So that cut my number in like half. So I had like 60, but they wanted to fill up the gym. So they bust in some other hilariously small schools to give me, a couple of hundred people to speak to. So we're getting ready in the morning. They got rows of chairs, aisle down the middle, pretty standard gym setup for an assembly. But then they did the most adorable thing. They put gym mats down in the front row for the little seventh graders to sit on. Aw, just like the little guys in the front on their little mats, all cozy. It was adorable. So we're getting set up, and a couple of weird things happened in Turtleford that morning. First weird thing that happened was the fact that they had the kindergarten first grade class setting up the gym for us, which I thought was a weird child labor thing they had going on in Saskatchewan. And they're like, go little minions. They're like, okay. And they went and did it, and the workmanship was terrible, chairs everywhere. But then the next funny thing that happened was this memory came rushing back to me of this next level energy we've all forgotten about as I watched these kids setting up the gym, especially those ones that were putting the gym mats down. The look on their face made this memory rush over me. There was no greater excitement in your life than being in kindergarten or first grade, walking out of the change room for gym and realizing, oh my gosh, the gym mats are out. Because when the gym mats were out, you were going to do some stuff. Some stuff you probably shouldn't do, but you somehow felt safe and protected and invincible because of 2 inches of foam and a little bit of vinyl. Somehow this was going to protect you from all injury. I saw this look go down on these kids' faces. They were like, they were all excited. And then one little guy, and I wish I got this kid's name because he was my hero that day. I'm just minding my own business, setting my stuff up for my speech. Over at the far side, I hear this little guy go, I'm going to jump. He meant this aisle in the middle. There were no mats there. All of his friends were like, yes, and then all excited. Now, please keep in mind, Key Club friends, I was the only adult in the room at the time. I don't know why. They just left me in the room with a bunch of kindergarten kids. That being said, I will neither confirm nor deny that I was the person that started chanting, jump, jump, jump. It might have been me. I don't know. So it's me and a bunch of kindergarten kids going, jump, jump. And this dude went for it. He hauled tail down those mats. And when his foot left the ground, everything kind of went slow-mo for a second. He was like, and then bam, hard on the gym. Like it was not even close. He was just like twitching on the ground. And his friends were like, dude, that was awesome. And he leapt up and went, I'm doing it again. Because the gym mats were out. There's something awesome about those gym mats being out. You felt safe, you felt protected, you felt like you could do anything. And the reason I tell you this story to start today is because one, that was a pretty funny thing that happened in my career. But two, you have the opportunity, if not the obligation, every single day to pull the gym mats out for people, make them feel safe, make them feel protected, make them feel like they can do anything. That's a gift you can give another person. But we'll put a pin in that. We'll circle back to it. Look, I'm a motivational speaker. I kind of get paid to be happy. But I've kind of got a bit of a creed that I'll share that I think some of you will share with me, is that I am an optimist, but that doesn't mean I'm oblivious. I'm positive, but it doesn't mean that I'm pretending. What I'm dedicated to is, serving others through impactful connections that will authentically cultivate optimism. That's what I want to do with my life. That's why I do what I do for a living. It doesn't come easy. It's not a snap of the fingers. It takes work. It takes practice. There are a lot of things that I do every single day in order to get myself up and get myself into the head. And everybody's got their own deal. Everybody's got their own routines, their own ceremonies that they're going to go through to get themselves up for the day. But some of us aren't doing anything at all. I've got some, I'll get up, I'll go to the bathroom, I'll drink a whole bunch of water. And the first thing I do with my day is make my bed, because it's check a box, get one thing done. Plus it's a little gift for future you. It's like you're in a hotel. You come back at the end of the day, go, my bed's made. Wow. And it's like, awesome. And maybe you leave a little mint for yourself on the pillow. I don't know. You live your best life. But while I'm making my bed, I do this thing that I learned from a speaker friend of mine from Colorado. His name's Dr. James Rouse. He does this thing every morning, and he calls it his prayer to the universe, where he kind of speaks his intention out loud every morning. And I adopted this practice, it's a different thing for everybody. I wrote my own thing, curated it, and it goes on for a couple of minutes. I won't necessarily, bore you with the whole thing. What I want to focus in on is the very last statement. So I start, dear universe, and I'm making my bed. And the last thing I say out loud, not, just in my head or whisper to myself, but out loud is, because today is going to be a great day. And I've got to tell you, friends, that changes things. Speaking that intention out loud changes things, because we all have something going on in here called our confirmation bias, because your subconscious mind always wants to prove you right. And so what happens is you're always looking for little hints, little patterns, little things that are going to prove you correct. So if I start my day by saying, today's going to be a great, well, I'm going to go out and look for it. That's going to be subconsciously going on in my head all day. If you start your day with, well, oh boy, today's going to suck, then guess what? Today is probably going to suck. We got to change that confirmation bias. I gave myself a little moniker, a little label a couple of years ago. I was making up a set of business cards. And on the back of my business card, it's got all my contact info. And this was very tongue in cheek, kind of a joke. Just says Ian Tyson, speaker, author, facilitator, silver lining prospector. That's what I called myself because that's just my fun way of saying yes. I don't just believe that every dark cloud has a silver lining. I go out and look for it. You give me that old timey prospector pickaxe and I'm out there digging for that silver lining every single day. And if you think about the times that we're all going through right now with the pandemic and a lot of people having a tough go, and I get it, but we don't get a silver lining without a dark cloud. We got to want it. We got to go out and do that. We've got to change that confirmation bias that's going on in our minds. It's very much like the thing that we are all subject to every single day in the digital world that we live in, which is the algorithm. For those of you who saw the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, you know what I'm talking about. Whether you're on Google, you're on Netflix, you're using Spotify, you're using Apple Music, you're using Amazon Prime, whatever it may be, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, any of them, they all have an algorithm. The algorithm is designed to give you more of what you want. That's why there is a category in Netflix called Because You Watched, ... fill in the blank, and it gives you more of that kind of thing. Even shows the percentage that matches with your algorithm, with their profile of you. That's what's going on up here. We've got this algorithm and it's designed to give us more of what we want. So it depends on what we're asking for. We can change that social media algorithm. We can change this one too. Several years ago, my best friend in the whole wide world, guy I've grown up with, he's now a middle school principal here in the town I live in. But he and his wife, both educators, they went and lived in Dubai for 2 years to teach. They were coming home after 2 years. They sent their 2 teenage daughters, who I've known since they were born, home a week early so they could close up the house. And the girls went to their grandparents. I went and picked them up at the airport in Toronto, here in Ontario. Picked the girls up, put them in the car, threw my phone in the back seat and said, Spotify's open, go to town, you two DJ. Great. We had a wonderful 2-hour drive home. Here's my problem. Took me probably 3 months after that to convince Spotify I was not, in fact, a 15-year-old girl. No shade to 15-year-old girls, but it was, Katy Perry and Post Malone and Ariana Grande. Thank you. Next. I wanted something else, okay? I wanted my 80s mix and I wanted it right now. I had to put on my own mixes, mute it, and let it play all day long to change, because my daily mixes on Spotify, I was like, what is this? You're killing me, Spotify. Because it thought I was somebody else and was giving me something different. This is what's going on up here. We've got to change our own algorithm. But how do we do this? It's not a snap of the fingers. How do we create that positivity? Part of it is through gratitude. Gratitude can be the kickstart that we need. And gratitude can be a tough thing to come by in the hardest of times. Let me tell you this. I have no memory of my mom's cooking. She passed when I was 10 years old. She had a brain tumor. She couldn't use her right arm or her left leg, was in a wheelchair for about 7 years before she passed. My brother and sister and I don't remember her really being at home. My dad, he ran his own business. That meant long days working and sometimes longer nights in the home office. He busted his butt to put food on the table. But the thing was, he wasn't necessarily the person putting the food on the table, because we were latchkey kids in the very real sense of the word. Had the string around our neck with the key. All three of us would come home from school. There'd be a note there. Here's the chores. Here's the things we had to do in order to make sure dinner got on the table. My older brother was usually in charge of some kind of meat. My younger sister, because she was younger, frozen vegetables, canned vegetables. She just heated them up. No big deal. Me, I was the carbs. I am still the carbs. It has become my life's work. But more often than not, it was one particular kind of carbs that I was charged with making. Instant mashed potatoes. If you've ever had is the word pleasure? I'm not sure, but instant mashed, the dehydrated potatoes that look like they've been put through a pencil sharpener, a little water, a little butter, a little milk, salt, pepper, you're there. Ugh. Not necessarily the best menu, but friends, I loved them, and I'll tell you why. because it was my job. It was my contribution. I remember us going to family therapy to get through that tough time. First session, therapist had us go around the room, say your name and what you feel your role is in the household. It came to me and I said, I'm Ian. I'm the mashed potatoes. Like I made it part of my identity. I loved when I did it so much I didn't have to measure anymore. I could just eyeball it, get it perfect every time. And yeah, my siblings and I, we fought like siblings do. We were throwing elbows in the kitchen, but home and the food went on the table. We may not have been a family that said grace all the time, but you better believe we gave thanks. We gave thanks for the food on the plate, gave thanks for each other in spite of the fighting, gave thanks for the Father that was getting us through. And we gave that thanks and found that gratitude in spite of the empty chair at the end of the table. And that sense of gratitude we felt, it made us want to give it back. We gave it, we got it, we wanted more. That food fed our bodies, the gratitude fed our lives. It became the fuel for our healing. That's why to this day in my life, I don't say I'm grateful. I say I have great fuel, GRATEFUEL, great fuel, because it's the fuel that gets you through. And it's no wonder my siblings and I all grew up loving to cook. It became a passion for all of us, and we still fight like siblings do. But more often than not, the thing we fight about is who's going to bring what to the family functions. And more often than not, back in the before times again, we haven't been able to do a family function in a little while, but there'd be a group email go out, and somewhere around the middle of it, it would say, "Hey, Ian, you want to bring mashed potatoes?" Yeah, you're damn right I do. Except the game has changed, friends. We're talking russet potatoes with the skins on, cut up, cooked in milk, aged white cheddar, chives, butter, roasted garlic, salt, pepper. Mwah, so good. My mouth is now watering a little bit, but I loved it so much. And the thing is, when I think about that time, what I think about most is my dad and how he must have felt. Do you remember being a kid, again, kindergarten, first grade age? You didn't have a job or any of your own money to get, Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthday, Christmas gift, anything like that. No. So what did you do? You made something, often at school, usually a piece of crap, if we're being real. And you'd come home and go, I made this for you. And as someone who has two kids that are now in their 20s, I can tell you, I miss the days when my kids would come home and go, Dad, I made this for you. All of themselves, all of their love put into it. We got to say, I made this for you every day for my dad, which makes me also realize, why don't we as individuals, and for all of you, especially as leaders, do the things every single day that allow you to look yourself in the mirror and say, I made this for you? Because we don't. We don't have that great fuel for ourselves. We don't fill our own cups up necessarily. And that makes it tough for us to serve others. I mean, and it's hard, and I get it, but I love to cook. I love when my girlfriend's over and stuff, but I live alone, so it's usually just me, and it's how I relax. It's how I show care for myself, and it's a creativity thing and whatever. And I love cooking. I'll post that on Instagram. I don't care. And sometimes when I do, I'll have a friend of mine text and say, "Hey, who's over?" And I say, "Nobody." He says, "So why did you plate it all up with all the fancy garnish and everything?" And I say, "'Cause I'm worth it." And friends, so are you. And you can't forget that, because if we're going to do these things and be of service to our community, we got to make sure we fill ourselves up first too. That's why when you're on a plane, you always put your own oxygen mask on first. I'm not saying it's a selfish thing. It's a fill your own tank up and care for yourself. And then you can start to care for the people around you. Real quick, before I have a few minutes left, just really quickly to finish up. When I was in sixth grade, I'll tell you a quick story. April 1st, 1982, very long time ago, like 40, almost, yeah, 41 years ago almost. And so in 1982, my math is terrible. I was in Mr. McLean's sixth grade class school here in St. Thomas, Ontario. My mom had passed away April 26, 1981. So it was almost a year later. That first anniversary was coming up, and a dark cloud was hanging over my head. There was no silver lining to be seen. It was like an ache inside of me, and I could feel it. The staff at the school had been great getting my brother and sister and I through, but with that anniversary coming up, it was hurting. And Mr. McLean, he was one of those teachers that helped get us through. But for the 5 years previous, he had been our school's gym teacher. He was literally the guy that pulled the gym mats out for me. But then now he'd given up gym and he taught core class. So I had him all day long. And he was really great. He always called me Mr. Tyson. We had very jokey teacher student rapport. And it's April 1st, 82. I hang up my backpack. I walk into the classroom and I'm standing in an empty space because there's no desk there. I inquired as to what was going on. And Mr. McLean's like, I don't know, that's your problem. And, we stood up for the national anthem and I just stood there in my hole. He was like, what are you doing? I don't know. And I just stood there awkwardly. And Mr. McLean said, Mr. Tyson, what are you doing? I said, sir, I maybe mentioned before, I don't have a desk. He said, well, it's got to be around here somewhere. Go find it. So I looked all over the school, knocking on every door, interrupting every class, every teacher smiling and going, no, Ian, I haven't seen your desk. I only found it in the room next door to Mr. McLean's room. Worst search ever. Big, huge. Last place I looked, had to drag this massive wood and steel desk. Was probably built in the 60s with, the big lid with all your stuff inside. Had to haul that thing back. Shook. And as I take it in there and interrupt the class by dragging into the room, Mr. McLean's getting a little furious. And he says, are we done? And I went, yes, sir. Thank you. And I opened the desk, nothing inside. And he saw the look on my face. He said, Mr. Tyson, what's the problem? I said, sir, I don't have any stuff. He said, again, this is your problem, not mine. You're interrupting class. Go find it. I probably spent 45 minutes pulling textbooks out of the bookshelf in the back of the room, pencils that were stuck in the drop ceiling. Had to go to a custodian and borrow a letter. They were like, skunk, 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 all up there. Crazy. Things on the windowsill, everything scattered. Finally got it out there. Mr. McLean's fuming mad. Are we done, Mr. Tyson? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Turns around, starts writing on the board. He stops mid-word, turns back around, says, oh, by the way, Mr. Tyson, April Fool. Now, friends, I've probably told this story a couple of hundred times. It chokes me up every time that I do. Because, yeah, it was a joke between a teacher and a student. But I know now with the value of hindsight, it was Mr. McLean saying, hey, Ian, it's going to be okay. We're going to get you through this. It's okay for you to laugh again. Friends, he pulled the gym mats out for me. He made me feel safe. He made me feel protected. He made me feel like I could do anything. And that was a gift that he gave me. The reason I tell you this is the same reason I talked about it off the top. You have the opportunity, if not the obligation, every single day to pull the gym mats out for people, serving people in your schools, serving people in your communities, as I saw with the presentations you were giving before, serving people around the world. But we got to make sure we take care of ourselves. We got to fill that cup up, take care of our great fuel. If you're having trouble being that silver lining prospector every single day, start it with gratitude. It will kickstart that engine and you will find it going and going and going. And friends, we only have a short bit of time together today, and I'm sorry it's not more. I could talk to you all day long, but I'll leave you with one last thing. I made this for you. So thank you all so much. You can reach me at Ian Tyson. It's right there, iantyson.ca. It's a Canadian thing. I visit people virtually at their schools, obviously way cheaper now without any travel expenses. So if you're ever looking for a speaker, by all means, drop me a line. I love staying in touch with people this way. So do reach out on social media. Key Club International, thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it. And I don't know, Thomas, if we have time for any questions or if I blew through my timeline. I don't know. I was having a lot of fun. So
no, we've got time. Thank you so much on behalf of ONETrack International. We greatly appreciate you coming here and taking your time to talk and inspire to future student leaders. So thank you again.
My pleasure. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Do a little soft shoe for you, whatever you need.
If you guys want to just unmute yourself or type in the chat.
Thought I heard somebody there. No?
I can ask a question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. What was the first win that made you?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. I couldn't hear you at all.
Okay. What was the first win that made you confident that you were going down the right path?
What was the first, if I heard you correctly, what was the first win that made me confident that I was going down the right path? Your sound just keeps breaking up a little bit, but I mean, to know that you're going down the right path, I mean, I guess it comes down to what your intention is. I have this thing that I do every day. I share it on social media too. I've been doing it for about 6 years. It's called my Rememboard, where I write myself a little note about my intention every night before I go to bed on a dry erase board on the back of the door to my apartment. When I wake up in the morning, I see it. It's a nice little note to myself. I've got it right here on my phone. What was the one I wrote last night? It had something to do with that. Where'd it go? Abundance. The abundance that you seek is found where your limits, your intention, and your peace all connect. So for me, it's like knowing you're on the right path is if all those different things are coming into alignment, like you're feeling that peace inside yourself, you're feeling like you're being of service to others, like you're following that purpose. That kind of gives me the confidence to move forward. I don't know if that answers your question or not. Anybody else? We got a couple of minutes.
I think there's one other question from Lauren that says, how long did it take you to change your mindset to one that was mainly positive / productive?
Took a long time. I mean, not even from when I was a speaker, but I mean, from when I was a kid, I probably didn't even process what was happening inside. You know, mental health wasn't as big a discussion then as it is now, and it still needs to be more. But I probably didn't process that and start to sort of be on an upswing really until probably when I got into high school. And honestly, getting into high school, getting involved in student leadership, sort of finding my tribe that way really boosted my confidence and boosted my positivity. But it's an ongoing battle. I mean, I've been a speaker, a professional speaker for 32 years. I'm 50 years and I still see a therapist. We all need to talk to somebody. And working on your mental health, working on that attitude is a tough thing to do, but a lot of it comes down to that intention that I start the day with. Today's going to be a great day. Even if you don't believe it when you first start saying it, you got to say it out loud with intention and activate that confirmation bias. Start changing that algorithm. Because after you do it for a while, it just becomes automatic. It's like the same kind of thing with the confirmation bias. It's like 11:11 on the clock. You know, you're like, oh my God, every time I look at a clock, it's 11:11. It's because you're telling yourself. And then your body clock is confirmation bias going, hey, dude, it's 11:11. Look at the clock. And then you go, oh my gosh, 11:11 again. Because your brain is just always looking to confirm these things. So set that, you know, fight out of your weight class, reach beyond maybe where you are feeling and make that the aim. And then you'll find yourself getting there more and more incrementally every single day. Hope that helps. Anybody else have any questions before I go?
I have a question.
Yes.
So first of all, I just want to say I loved your presentation. It was
Thank you.
amazing. And another thing, so I've been working on, I think like what you're talking about, like the confirmation bias, and I tell myself like a positive affirmation. I've been telling the same one for like a little bit, but I tell myself in the morning, just kind of like you said, kickstart your day and stuff. What were some of like, or I don't know, like instant changes, not instant, but some of the bigger changes in like your, I don't know, physical, mental, emotional health that you noticed after you started doing that?
Well, it was kind of across the board, especially with this, you know, speaking my whole intention, this thing my friend James does, where he literally, you know, dear universe, and says this whole, and I say this same thing out loud. You know, if my girlfriend's here, I still say it out loud, you know, making the bed while she's still in it, whatever. But I still say this out loud, and the out loud thing versus in your head really makes a difference, but it just puts a spring in your step. It makes you stand a little bit taller because you start to believe this thing. And, you know, some of the, you know, phraseology that I use in that intention, and, you know, it's changed and mutated over the years that I've done it. But what starts to happen, the statement you're saying, and you start to be conscious, those little phrases, those little key things, like one of the things I say, and it is, I will respond and not react. So instead of knee-jerk reaction to things that happen to me, I'm going to take a beat and respond. So that in my head. So when I'm encountered with a situation where something happens, it just repeats in my mind, respond, don't react. It starts with, dear universe, today I will go forward with positive intent and joyful purpose. Those words are ringing in my head every day. It's always in there. It's kind of like always low key playing in the background. And so it just increases this awareness and gets you just walking with a purpose. And, you know, your purpose and the practical things you start to do start to line up, and it becomes pretty incredible. I don't know what the time on that. It's going to be different for everybody. It wasn't an instantaneous change for me, and I felt a little weird as I started to curate what the words were, but you got to push through that time. And then it started to get real good. And I started to realize, wow, this is making a difference. I'm feeling better on the daily. Do I still have bad days? Absolutely. It's not a snap your fingers and change everything, but I started to see the silver lining more often, and it really changed things. It even started to affect, some people who were maybe negative influencers in my life started pushing back against the positivity I was bringing, and made me realize maybe you don't need to be in my life as much because you're not picking up what I'm laying down. And that kind of thing started to happen for sure.
Thank you so
Anybody
much.
else? Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian, for that inspirational speech. I'll leave, unless you want to do it right now, I'll leave your email for anyone to contact you with further questions.
Sure, I'll throw in my my email and my website in the chat, and please reach out. Any questions, anything you need, I'm here to be of service. So thank you. Thanks, Thomas, for reaching out and for having me out for this today, my friends. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Take care now.
All right. I hope everyone enjoyed Ian Tyson's inspirational speech. Now we have a guest speaker by the name of Kevin Carroll. Raised by his grandparents in the greater Philadelphia area, Kevin spent endless hours at the neighborhood playground where he found his calling, a red rubber ball. His subsequent pursuit of sport and play, aka his red rubber ball, plus his love of learning, has led Kevin to become an author, a speaker, and a social change agent. Kevin is an author of 4 highly successful books published by ESPN, Disney Press, McGraw-Hill, and a kid's book about. He has helped turn creative ideas into reality for organizations such as Nike, Starbucks, Adidas, Walt Disney, Target, Procter & Gamble, Columbia Sportswear, Mattel, the National Basketball Association, and many others. Kevin has dedicated his life to advancing education, sports, and play as a vehicle for social change and success. He was honored to address the United Nations as part of the UN Year of Sports for Development and Peace in 2005, is an ongoing advisor and active supporter for many global innovation organizations. Kevin was named by Success Magazine as one of 19 seers changing the world. Without further ado, Kevin Carroll, please take it away.
Thanks, Thomas. What's happening? How's everybody doing? You good? Everybody's good? So I always like to start off with a quick question in the chat. Let's do it this way. If you're a weather forecast, what would your weather forecast be, you personally? If you're a weather forecast, for me, it's a blizzard-like conditions here in Portland, Oregon. Thomas knows what we're dealing with right now, but I'm still partly sunny dealing with a blizzard. So in the chat, put what your weather forecast would be, how you're feeling right now. Are you cloudy? Are you sunny? Are you partly cloudy? But what would that be? Sunny, snow, sunny. I love it. Repedia, I appreciate that, Alexandria. I appreciate that. Yes, that's what's up. Oh, there's a Grace in there. So that's my wife's name. So Snowy, so Grace. Love to see any Grace anytime I see that. I see Bethany up in there. Bethany, what's happening? So brilliant. So sunny with a single cloud. Caitlin, that's an interesting weather forecast. I love that. So listen, this is just a way to actually set a tone and get a sense for how people are. And I'm always about meeting you where you're at. So that's a big part of the way that I do any of my presentations. The other way that I might ask is I might ask in one word, how are you feeling right now? And put that in the chat. But what it helps me understand is I'm meeting you where you're at and where's your mindset and what you're thinking about. Now, I kind of listened in a bit on some of Ian's conversation and really enjoyed how transparent he was and vulnerable with you all. I just want to make sure, Thomas, do we want to make sure I leave room for Q&A? I just want to make sure, because I saw that there was some Q&A. Is that part of what we're doing? Because I know I'm slotted for this 20-minute window, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, like a 3 to 5 Q&A within your 20 minutes would be great.
Brilliant, brilliant, done. So with that all being said, I'm going to share with you some simple truths, some simple lessons, a little bit about my backstory. And most importantly, I think these simple truths that I've come to understand that really matter to me. And I get a chance to talk with young people all over the world. And in fact, I'm actually doing a really cool project right now with Pharrell and his team Yellow, and just got involved with that. And we're actually working with B. Parker and Pharrell's Team Yellow, his nonprofit, around education and lifting up the next generation of leaders, makers, doers, and dreamers, AKA you all, around discovering your passion, understanding the importance of having something that gets you out of bed in the morning and know why. And I think even more importantly, how are you going to be a game changer? And I'll share my backstory. It's really brief so that you get a sense of what I came through and how I'm here right now, and how my circumstances, I didn't allow them to dictate my destiny. And then we'll go into some simple truths. If that's good, can you give me a thumbs up? Thank you, Jason. You were a little slow on that, but I'm glad I saw you give me that thumbs up. So, okay, so I'm the product of two addict parents, two parents who abandoned their three boys. My dad left when I was 3. I would never see my dad again. My mom left us in a predicament where we had to be rescued by a stranger. So my childhood was filled with addiction and abandonment, upheaval and uncertainty, dysfunction and disappointment, until my grandparents came into my life. And my grandparents actually rescued us, but we were actually left in a trailer. My older brother was 8. I was only 6. My little brother was only 3. And we had been in this trailer for 5 days alone. My mom said she would be right back, and 5 days had passed. She had not come back. And I got so upset and fed up with it. I wanted to go find help. And so we went and found help. We didn't know where we were, though. When we banged on the door of a trailer, and a woman opened the door and she asked how she could help. And I said, my mommy's not here and we're not even in school. Can you call my grandfather? She called my grandparents and I told them what was going on. And my grandfather said, well, where are you? And I said, I don't know. And I asked the stranger and she said, oh, you're in Bowling Green, Virginia. We were well over 200 miles away from Philadelphia, which is where we lived before my mom moved us. And my grandfather said, it's too far. We can't come get you. Can you imagine? My heart just dropped at 6 years old when I hear my grandfather say he can't come get us. He said, can I talk to the woman? I hand the phone to her. They have a brief conversation. The next thing I know, the woman says, come with me. We're going to the bus station. We're going to try to find the bus driver going back to Philadelphia. And we're going to see if he'll allow you to get on the bus with no parents or money, only a promise that your grandparents will be waiting at the bus station in Philadelphia and we'll pay the bus driver back. 8-year-old, my older brother. I was 6. My little brother was only 3. We go to this bus station in Bowling Green, Virginia. She finds the bus driver. Now, you need to understand that this bus driver and this situation is much more dire than we even understood, because this is happening in the late 1960s. So I always tell people I'm well preserved, right? I just had my 62nd birthday. So I'm the Black Benjamin Button. That's what I tell people, right? So I don't know why I look as young as I do, but I do. Right? But both my brothers are giants. They're over 6 feet tall, over 220 pounds, full beards, chest back hair. I still barely shave to this day at 62 years young. I have no idea what happened, but I got a different set of genes. And so I've heard that your inside is reflected on your outside. So maybe that's why that I'm young inside. But this is the 1960s. This is happening. Turbulent and tumultuous times, right? 3 Black boys are in the South alone. It's dangerous for us. Anything could happen to us. The bus driver that she approaches is white. He agrees to put us on the bus and get us back to Philadelphia. I'll never forget how clear he was. You're going to sit in one seat. You're not going to budge from that seat. I'm going to get you boys back to Philadelphia. Do you understand me? We nodded our heads and said, yes, sir. We get back to Philadelphia and my grandparents take us in. And there's a playground in the neighborhood, in my grandparents' neighborhood. And that was the first place that I felt safe. It was the first place that I felt like I belonged. And I played sports from that point on, but I never played sports for trophies, medals, or first place. It was always for belonging. I needed to feel connected. We all need to feel connected. We all need to have a sense of belonging. And I understood that really early in my childhood. The next place that I felt like I connected was actually the public library. And the first book I took out of the public library was Where the Wild Things Are. Everybody should know that book. Everybody knows Where the Wild Things Are. That was the first title that I took out of the library, and it set off my love of learning. I love to read and I love learning, and I became a really good student. So that was my second safe place. And then the third safe place that I had was actually my best friend's house because I met his mom. But the way that I met his mom was actually because we got in a fight. He was a new kid and moved into the neighborhood. We got in a scuffle at the playground because the kids egged us on to have a fight to see who was tough, right? I didn't want to fight. He wanted to fight. I got mad because he kept wanting to fight. So I jumped on him and we scuffled a little bit and we're covered in dirt. And literally, Norman says to me, "You want to come to my house for peanut butter and jelly?" That was his peace offering. And I walked down to his house and I met his family and they became my family. But most importantly, his mom became my CEO. That's what I call her, my chief encouragement officer of my dreams. Miss Lane became the most important person in my life who encouraged me to rise above my suffering and circumstances, to not let my circumstances dictate my destiny. And because of Miss Lane, my CEO, because of books, my love of reading and learning, and because of a ball, my love of sports, I found a way to rise above my suffering and circumstances. I want to remind all of you watching this, you all have someone like Miss Lane in your life, someone who wants nothing but the best for you, someone who believes in you, who encourages you. They're supportive, but they're also demanding. See, Miss Lane was demanding. She challenged me. And the way that she challenged me was because she would always say, "Don't talk about it, be about it. There's lots of talkers and very few doers. Which one are you, Kevin?" I learned that action was the secret ingredient to turning ideas and dreams into reality. I learned that if I tapped into the importance of my goals, but I was about that action, I could manifest them. But I needed a Miss Lane in my life who was supportive plus demanding of me. She believed in me, but she also lovingly shoved me towards my destiny. So all of you should think about that person. Recognize that if you don't have that, seek it out. Supportive plus demanding. They know you have it in you. They know you can rise above whatever you're dealing with. They know that you have greatness, but you got to put in the work. So the ball, books, and a community of betterment, Miss Lane, most importantly, allowed me to get a bachelor's degree in speech communication and sports medicine, a master's degree in health education. I spent 10 years in the Air Force as a language translator. I speak 5 languages: Serbian, Croatian, Russian, German, and Czech. I always remind people I dropped Spanish after 5 minutes in high school, but I still remember that 5 minutes. Es Susana en casa, no en la cocina, donde está en la sala, no en la cocina, and I walked out of class. I would have had Spanish in my repertoire too, but I always point this out. I'm a Black guy from Philly. What am I going to do with Serbian and Croatian and Czech? I didn't think those languages would ever come in handy. Little did I know that they were actually going to come in handy. I became an athletic trainer at the high school level, the college level, and then I get my dream job. I become only the 3rd Black trainer in the history of the NBA for my hometown team, the Philadelphia 76ers. And guess what? When I was a kid, I actually said, "I'm going to make it to the NBA one day," and everybody laughed at me at the park. And I said, "No, I'm going to make it." And when I did, guess who was calling me for tickets? "Yo, Kev, can you hook us up with some tickets? Remember that thing you said when I was 9 or 10? No tickets for you. Haters are my motivators. Be gone." Right? And so I'm on the bench with the 76ers and my languages come in handy. We're playing against the team, the Charlotte Hornets, and there's a player on the team from Serbia. His name is Vlade Divac. If you're an NBA fan, you might know that name. If not, he's 7 feet tall, from the former Yugoslavia, and he's having a monster game and talking trash every time he runs by our bench, how bad we are. I can beat you by myself. And my coach is trying to figure out a way to distract him so he can come up with a better defense. And he remembered I spoke his language, Serbian. So he turns to me in the middle of the game, "Carol, why don't you say something about that guy's mom or dad or sister or brother when he runs by the bench to distract him?" I'm like, "That man is 7 feet tall. I'm not doing that." He goes, "No, no, no. He'll never expect it from you." He says, "Just say something to him every time. I want to come up with a better defense and we can stop this guy." No, I'm not doing it. So I'm arguing with my coach about insulting a 7 foot tall man in his native language, Serbian, in the middle of an NBA basketball game. I finally surrendered to my coach's request and I started saying really bad things to this guy. Now, mind you, we had 2 weeks of obscenities training in the military. I can tell your mama jokes in Serbian to crush your soul. So I started insulting his mom, his dad, his sister, his brother. By the 5th time, I've insulted his whole family lineage. right? He stops. Vlade starts walking towards our bench, looking for who's insulting his family. And the coach points me out. And he goes, that little guy right there is saying it. And he looks at me like, there's no way. And I go, Dobar dan, Carlos Vigo Spodene. He's like, what? Whole rest of the game, not making any shots, can't do anything right. He's staring at me every time he runs by the bench. The coach high fives me. Great job, Carol. Do something with the other guys. I'm like, coach, I can't help you there. We lose the game, but Vlade comes into our locker room looking for me. Where's that little guy at? And everybody points me out like, oh, there he is. And so here comes this 7-foot tall man towards me, and I'm bracing for the worst possible outcome. The unexpected happens. He invites me to join the Yugoslavian national basketball team for the '96 Olympic Games in Atlanta as their sports medicine liaison and translator. The NBA does a special feature on me, and someone from Nike sees it. I get a phone call out of the blue from Nike. They want to hire me away from the Sixers, and we're going to create my own position at Nike together. But I'm a single father at this point. I'm raised my boys on my own for 15 years. And so I sit my boys down to have a discussion about this opportunity. I got this whole speech built out, right? I'm talking to my 2 sons, and my older son stops me in the middle of my whole speech. He goes, Dad, I have one question about this Nike opportunity. I said, okay, what is it? Will we get free gear from Nike? I'm like, yeah, it's just, let's go. So I left the 76ers in 1997, moved out here to Portland, Oregon, and I've been in Portland for 24 years now. Both my boys and my daughter actually went to Portland Public Schools, and I worked at Nike for 7 years. I got to create my own title there, Creative Catalyst. And those of you who are sciencey, you might remember a catalyst is an excitatory agent that speeds up or changes a process, right? It helps others turn ideas into reality. That's what I did at Nike. I got to work there for 7 years, worked all over the company and did lots of different things. But one of the greatest moments that I had at Nike was I got 3,000 people to play tag for 3 hours. And I did it because I wanted everybody to be more inventive, more imaginative, have more community, and have some fun. I started citing research around play, that play is serious business. If you want more innovation, more creativity, better problem solving, more abstract thinking, all these things that you want to come up with better ideas, find time for fun. And as I started talking more and more about it, I said, we should play tag. And they said, really? I said, in fact, we should play toilet tag. That's what we actually played first. It was toilet tag. Remember when you play toilet tag, when you get tagged, you have to put your arm up and scream, flush me. Somebody flush me. And they pull your arm down and you run again. So we actually played tag with 50 people and it grew to 3,000. And it was the most beautiful bedlam I'd ever seen. Phil Knight found out about the tag game and who was behind it, me, and actually said he wanted to have regular meetings with me. He called me the mayor of Nike. He said, I might be CEO and chairman, but Kevin, you're the mayor here. You know this place. So you're going to help me understand the culture here. So I got a chance to work all over the company, but most importantly, I think I was the culture caretaker there. I helped others understand the importance of community and belonging and connection. And I left Nike in 2004, and it was not easy. I got a book deal with ESPN and Disney. I had a speakers bureau and a talent agency representing me now. And I still was working at Nike, and I loved my job. I sat down with Phil Knight and I said, this is what's happening, but I'm really, really, conflicted. I like it here so much. I really don't know if I should leave. And he looked me dead in the eye. I'll never forget. And he said, I don't let talent leave here. And then he paused and then he said, you'll be the third person I tell they should go. We would be selfish to keep you. We'll be proud of everything you do. So I left Nike in 2004 and I've been on my own for 17 years now as an author, a speaker, and an instigator of inspiration. I've been trying to raise my voice on behalf of the next generation of leaders, makers, doers, and dreamers, and finding a way to actually talk to the people who influence you, the adults, the rents, those individuals who used to be kids, those grown-ups in your life. I'm trying to encourage them to model the best behavior for you all so that you can see the possibilities and the potential that you have through them, because they're the influencers in your life. And so that was a big part of what I've been doing over the last 17 years now, traveling the world, inspiring others to find ways of community, connection, positivity, and creativity. And so the simple truths that I've learned over the years, I want to share with you right now. One of them has to start with looking up. I have one look up day where I look up more than I look down at a screen. And that lookup day, I'm trying to discover new things. That's about my curiosity. I think it's so important that you have more time looking up at the big screen called life. Everything's in HD and 3D, by the way, just as a reminder. So why not look up every once in a while at the big screen called life and discover something? Have that discovery mindset. That curiosity will serve you well. When you're curious, ideas will come to you more often, right? And with more confidence. But the only way that you can come up with ideas, you got to take good care of your energy. So how are you taking good care of your energy? How are you making sure that you have the requisite energy to go after your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations? Because one of the things that I also know is that human potential is boundless and endless. Your circumstances never have to dictate your destiny, but you got to have some fight in you. You got to have some fight in you. Muhammad Ali said something beautifully. I'd either won or lost that fight before I entered the ring. I'd either won or lost that fight before I entered the ring. So you got to have some grit. You got to have some fight in you for the things that you want. Don't talk about it, be about it. You're gifted something every single morning when you see the light of day. You're gifted 86,400 seconds worth of opportunity every single morning that you see the light of day. That's your gift. Hence why they call it the present. 86,400 seconds are gifted to you every single day. What will you do with them? Will you waste them or will you maximize them to get closer to manifesting that hope, that dream, that aspiration into reality? If you're willing to do that, then know this to be true, do it alone. You got to build a tribe. You already have a tribe here, right? Within the Pacific Northwest in this region. Keep people close because what you've discovered is like-minded people. You want to stay close to like-minded people, people who are about something. You're going to have other friends who are not going to be about something. Those are going to drop off. You want more and more people around you that are about advancing hopes and dreams and aspirations. So you have to reach out to people. My grandmother would say, speak up, a closed mouth don't get fed. You got to speak up and let people know what your hopes are, what you need. You never know who might want to help you. And how are you going to make a difference in the world, right? I've always believed that we all can do a random act of kindness every single day, a solid for someone, but it's a choice, isn't it? You can be all about yourself, right? And all about your world, or you can look at this other groups of people around you, starting in your own community, your own backyard. How are you doing something to make someone else's day better? Because you get back what you give out. And the more that you're willing to do that, if your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. Your dream should be audacious. And there are 5 ingredients to any dream: dedication, responsibility, education, attitude, and motivation. DREAM. D, dedication. Don't talk about it, be about it. R, take responsibility. Who's holding you accountable? Who's that supportive plus demanding adult in your life? The E, education. Stay curious and be a lifelong learner. The A, your attitude. You bring some stank energy, guess what's coming your way? You bring some good energy, guess what's coming your way? Got to stay motivated. No dream is microwavable. I'm trying to tell you guys right now, it will not happen overnight. You got to trust and believe and hang in there. So those are my simple truths. Look up every once in a while and be curious. Bring that energy. How are you taking good care of your energy? Because ideas await you. The more that you recognize that human potential is boundless and endless, you got to know that you have to fight for it. You're gifted 86,400 seconds every single day. What will you do with them? You can't do it alone. So how are you building community? How are you reaching out to other people? Do one random act of kindness so that you let others know that you're not just about yourself, you're about assisting your community and lifting others up. And dream big. If your dream doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. It should be audacious. It should be so big that, oh my gosh, did I do enough? Grade yourself at the end of each day. Did I do something to advance that hope, that dream, that opportunity? And one of the things that I always like to talk about is this notion of optimism. Look, I know you guys are dealing with some challenges. I know it's not easy. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay in that spiral. So if you have a tribe, if you have a community around you, and you've got people that you can be vulnerable and transparent with, that's really important right now. And the more that you're willing to raise your voice and let people know that you might be struggling, they can help. optimism for the win. That's the way I believe, right? That positivity is going to help us win this day and get to the other side of this. And I appreciate you all so much for what you're doing on a Saturday, especially in a blizzard condition if you hear out of PDX. So I'm going to take a few questions and we're good. Thank you so much.
I have a question. Can you talk more about your books?
Yes. So my 4 books, I've done, all of them have won different design awards. This is the first book in my whole series, Rules of the Red Rubber Ball. I got a shout out from Dwayne The Rock Johnson. That's my guy. So I've known Dwayne before he became a megastar. I actually knew him way back. And so that was my first book. All of my books have some kind of a ball call out on them because the ball, like I said, saved my life. And so this is one I'm really proud of right now, is a kid's book about belonging. This is my newest book that I've done. You guys should check out that whole series. The optimism book is part of that too. That's a super dope series. And we're actually working on a masterclass now for your group for 13 to 17-year-olds, right? And anyone who's trying to raise their game. But so all my books have been really wonderful opportunities to share my story in different ways. So, and Nazdravi, Anna, bless you. Yeah, I saw you sneezing, so it's all good. So yeah, so any other questions? Thanks, Bethany.
I had a question. So you talked about motivation, and in your dream, I don't know what you call that, analogy?
Acronym, yes.
Acronym, there we go, thank you. And so I think for me, motivation is always like the hardest. So how would you go about like finding motivation or staying motivated?
I think it's more about staying motivated, right? It's easy to get the initial like excitement, but sustaining it is hard. And that's where you have to determine, is this really something I want? If this really matters to me, and I'm going to sustain this. And you have to not look at in totality, look at little wins and stack little wins. And then when you look up, you would have reached the goal. But I think so many times the goal gets so big, it can be overwhelming. And it's like, there's no way I'll ever get to that. And you get demotivated. And so I think the more that you actually look at grading yourself at the end of the day, did I do one thing? And maybe it was a little thing, but did I do that one thing that got me closer? And before you know it, you've been stacking those micro wins. And lo and behold, here you are. But you also have to be open to the dream actually pivoting or shifting, because you might think it's this, but it could be something much broader that you didn't know you were going to discover within the quest for it. So that's the other thing I think is really important too. So stack those micro wins, those little wins, right? But grade yourself at the end of the day. Did I get closer today? Did I do one thing? And it's a go or no go. It's a simple grade. Because if it's no go, you want to start seeing, did I stack 5 no goes? I need to reevaluate that. But if it's one, yeah, might have had a rough day. That's okay. And also, who's holding you accountable, Anna? That's important too, to have someone that's checking on you. Hey, how's that going? Because that'll always make you have to report back to someone. I think that's our time. I'm out. I gotta go. He unmuted, so that means I know. Get ready to get to all delete.
Thank you, Kevin, for your inspiring words and your motivational speech. We really all appreciate it. All the kind words you said, all the helpful advice you gave us. Yeah, thank you. Now we're gonna move.
My pleasure. I gotta say one thing, Justin. I appreciate you, because he was giving me all kind of like little snap ups and twists when I was hitting some things. So I appreciate you, Justin. Take good care. You guys be well.
The next guest speaker that we have today is Vibe Nahata. He is the CEO of Success Society International. At just 18, he has spoken to youths from 51 countries across the world and has touched thousands of lives. He also runs his inspirational TV show called Being Champions on national television. Vipuff is the founder of the Smiley Mission and has made it his life mission to ignite champion within teens. Now let's give him a warm welcome.
Yay! It's fun with, being with all of you. But one thing that my friend, missed to share there, Diva, is that along with all these designations, I'm very proud of one profound designation, that I'm a great Choco Stella. Now, if you don't know what a Choco Stella means, it means that my mom runs a bakery here in Nepal, and after 11 o'clock, there are chocolates in the fridge. So you get in there, you get the best of it, and that's how you steal the chocolates and call yourself a proud Choco Stella. And what even makes it special is that there's a Valentine season going on in here, and it's already Valentine Day over here in Nepal. It's 3 a.m., and I'm as excited as I could be 3 a.m. in a Monday morning, being with young champions from USA, all different parts of USA. I'm so excited to be with you. And I heard Jimmy talk about burnouts from breakups and all that stuff. I got into my first relationship when I was 13, and I broke up when I was 13, and ever since I've never been in a relationship. So that's how it has worked out for me. When I'm over here with all of you wonderful people, there is no professor to preach but a friend to share, because I'm 18, many of you are 18, 19, 16, 17, so we are in the same club. So as we go ahead over here, we're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of discussion, and that's how we're going to learn. Okay, so before we go ahead, there are two quick rules for today's session, and that is that whenever I ask you who are we, you're going to take your right hand towards the top and shout out, "We are champions." Okay, if that's okay, give me a thumbs up. Oh yeah, on the count of 3, 2, and 1, who are we? Champions, indeed, indeed, we are champions. Now, the second quick rule is that throughout the session, you gotta be funny. So I want you to give me your right hand and give me a hi. Yeah, amazing. Now put your right hand in your nose this way and do a. Okay, the left hand in your right ears and a. Amazing. I love that. Look at your funny faces. Amazing. Now, in today's session, uh, I'm going to share you of how you can become champion in school and in life, how I got started when I was 15 and all that stuff. But what most important is that we're going to have a good time together. Okay. So, you know, I'll share you a quick personal story. Okay. I have a quick question for you. What do you think is the reason that most teens never achieve the big dreams they have in life? Type in the chat section. What do you think is the number one reason that most teens never achieve the big dreams they have in life? Okay, wrong mindset, writes Thomas. Interesting. Uh-huh. Scared, that's true. Uh-huh. Fear of failure. I love this interaction. Lack of resources, depressed. That's right. Well, these are all true, but maybe not. So, if you remember me as a middle school student, you would know a few things for sure: math, science, karate, dance, music. I was good at none of them. But I was great at one thing. Now, give me a high if you believe that no matter what, all of us are great at least one thing in life. Do you believe all of us are great at least one thing in life? Right? My skill was different. I was also great at one thing, and my one thing, my one special gift was different. It was unique. It was so amazing that I was known for this special skill, not only in my classroom, not only in my school, but also in my neighborhood. Can you guess what that special skill was? In the chat section, quick. Yep. Art. Interesting. Lean writes art. Okay. Speaking writes Ginny. Speaking like Alex, making people laugh. I bet I'm good at it. you know, my special skill was unique and was so different, and my special skill was getting beaten for no freaking reason. So in every classroom, there's this one kid who's the joker who'd come in the class, get beaten, get ridiculed, get back to home crying, and that was me getting bullied every single day in school. So I remember that day very well. It was almost 7 June 2015. I was getting back to my classroom from my final period, the eighth period, and out of nowhere, my friends came in to hit me, and I had a lot of bullies, okay? But among them, there was this one leader. His name was Sahil. Now, this guy was tall and fit. He looked like Tom Hanks, but was a, Darth Vader version of him, right? So I was walking in there, and Sahil came out of nowhere, and he slapped me on my face. I was down on the ground, but I was angry. So I pulled my sleeves, got my hairs right, I took down my spectacles, cleared my eyes, got my fist right, and put my fist in my eyes and started crying. Sahil, why do you hit me all the time? And Sahil, he'd be like, because I'm bigger than you. So I was walking back to my classroom, and believe me, I was angry. I took the water bottle, went to washroom, took the water bottle, put the entire bottle over my head and shouted, why me always? Now raise your hand if you have ever felt and asked this question, why me always? Right? And I was feeling exactly like that in the moment. So I went back to my bus, and 10 minutes down the line, alone in the seat, back to my home felt like ages. So I got back to my room, closed the door, put the pillow over my head, and cried for an entire hour. Unless my only soulmate came to my room. Give me a high if you have one soulmate in your life, right? It could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a friend. And that soulmate for me was none other than my tuition teacher. His name was Roshan sir. So he came in there, and he looked like Tom Hanks, and he was my, he was my man. So he came in and he asked me, why are you crying, Vaibhav? And I'd be like, oh, no, Sahil hit me, Mom. He's like, what are you saying? And I get myself cooled down and explain to him of what Sahil hit me once again, and I was bad and I was sad and all of that. And I said to Roshan sir, Roshan sir, I'm going to be a nobody, a complete failure. I have nothing in me. Like, see that again? I said, I'm going to be a loser. I am a loser, complete failure. At that moment, if you're sitting next to me, you would see him. He took my collars, took me right as I was seeing in the camera, and he said to me, Vaibhav, don't you dare say that ever again. You are a champion, but you have to be you to be the champion. Once again, he said to me, Vaibhav, you are a champion, but you have to be you to be the champion. And believe me, at that moment, there was like eureka moment for me. And I was confident, and I felt like never before. The next day, I got back to bus and went to school. And believe me, I felt confident like anything. I felt like I was the Iron Man. I was indeed so damn powerful and excited. I was so confident, as if I had discovered the coronavirus vaccines right there. I got down from the bus, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw Sahil right in his eyes. And he was 150 meters from me. So I walked in there, I got closer to him, and at that moment, I was standing next to him. I freezed. Now, if you ever remember, everything's going well, you're walking around, and out of nowhere, you see your crush. And all of that confidence turns into an awkward situation right there. Or you have an exam just next day, you have said your parents that you'll be studying hard, and out of nowhere, they catch you making TikToks or playing PlayStation. That was exactly how I felt. So I saw Sahil right in his eyes, and I said to him, I was trying to say, but the words wouldn't come out, and reminded to myself of what Roshan sir told me, that Vaibhav, you are a champion, but you have to be you to be the champion. So I got myself back up, and I saw Sahil right in his eyes and told him that, Sahil, you've been hitting me all the time. I got my hands right, and guess what? Damn! Now, can you believe it? This guy has been hitting me for this last 3 years, and I get my hands on him. I felt damn good. It was amazing. Until if you were sitting just next to me, 6 minutes from them, I kept running, and Sahil kept chasing until I was caught again and beaten. And I was down on the ground. But that day, as I stood up with scars on my face, you can see some even here right now, I reminded to myself that, Vaibhav, you are a champion, but you have to be you to be the champion. And the same I say to all of my wonderful friends right here, right? You are a champion, but you have to be you to be the champion. Just because you fail doesn't mean you are a failure. Just because you lose, it doesn't make you a loser. Just because you fall down, you do not have to stay down, because one single situation cannot define who you are or who you're going to be. So that very day, I felt a transition within me. And ever since I started my business of ping pong balls, I would get duplicate ones at 17 cents in US currency and sell it at 35 cents. And I sold a few and then I got caught. But then I started my business of books. I'd get books from India, somehow to Nepal from my friends from India. And then I used to sell them. I had a distribution chain across 16 different classes in my school, and I used to sell books everywhere until I left my school. I had the distribution chains working, but eventually I stopped it because speaking was more lucrative. Just kidding. I got started, I got started because, with my company later on and all that stuff. Right now, I run my TV show in the national television in Nepal. Along with that, I've been speaking to young people, high schoolers, middle schoolers all across the world. I was in Canada last month. You know, I'm in a mission to inspire teens to become champion. When we are here together, I just want to remind you that if I can do it, you can do it. And together, all of us can become champions. So as we go ahead right now, I'm going to share you 3 steps to becoming a champion. Give me a hi if you'd like to learn what are the 3 steps to become the champion. A hi. Interesting. Very well. Very well. Now, the first step about becoming a champion is to find your championship. Now, what is finding your championship? That sweet spot. They call it the passion, the purpose, and all of that. Now, I learned about it when I was in Rajasthan in India. I had this little girl, my nephew, her name, little Aradhya. She was my nephew, and I went over there, and it was noon. And in noon in Rajasthan, people would literally sleep because it's too hot in there. So I was over there, and Aradhya, she was 3 then. She went to the kitchen looking for chocolates. She was opening one box after another, one box after another. I went to her, "What are you doing, Aradhya?" She's like, "I'm searching for chocolates." And I'd be like, "Where are they?" She says, "It's in here." And I'd be like, "In which boxes? Why are you opening all of them?" She says, "I don't know in which box, but they are in here." So she opened one box after another box after another, and eventually, after 40 to 50 boxes, she found her chocolates, simply got back to bed after eating those chocolates as if she were asleep, right? And that's how you find your passion. Now, type in the chat section, what is the favorite thing that you love to eat? Is it sushi? Is it pizzas? Is it burgers? Type in the chat section. What is your favorite food to eat? It's sushi, writes Bethany, right? Interesting. Soup, writes Leah. Amazing. It's different for all of us. Crepes, ravioli, mac and cheese, pizza, dessert. Interesting. But I have a question. How did you find out that pasta is your favorite, or dessert, or mac and cheese, or creepies are your favorite? You tasted all those different stuff right there, from burger to desserts, and that's how you found out that among all of these, that's what I love the most. Similar it is for finding your championship, finding your passion. You try as many things as possible, and that's how you get started. Now, along with this, a very important question to ask to find your championship is, what would you love to do even if you were not paid for it, right? And what is that one thing that when you start losing, you lose track of time? Now, I'm not talking about Instagram, because being about your championship is always about creation and not about consumption, right? So that's how you find your championship. The step number 2 is to find a champion and be a cadet. Now, what is being a champion? The other day I was in the field, and there was this little 7-year-old kid, and he was in the poles right there. He's trying to do some pull-ups. He was like, "Oh," he kept trying hard, but he would get down eventually. So I went to his grandpa, who was just right next to him, and asked him, "What the hell is this kid doing? Why don't you do something?" He says that he saw John Cena into the WWE. He asked his PT teacher, how can he get the body? And the PT teacher told that he need to do pull-ups for that. And that's what he's doing. He needs that body. So right there, when he was trying to do that pull-ups, his grandpa came from the side. He gave him a little butt push out of nowhere. And this guy thinks that he's gonna pull-ups, right? And he goes into the entire field shouting, "I can't do pull-ups. I'm gonna be John Cena," right? That's how it is about finding a champion. It's a mentor, someone whom you can look up to, seek guidance from, and all of that stuff. And how do you find a champion, a mentor? When you are high schoolers and when we are young right there, it's much easier. You know why? Because when we are young, people really want to help you. That's how it works in every single place, right? So you reach out to someone who's really successful in your connections, you reach out to them, you reach out to 10 people over email, you get a reply in the right way. That's how you find your champion. But at the same time, you have to be a cadet. Who's a cadet? A real hustler who's giving in his 100% every single freaking time, right? Steve Jobs had his mentor, but at the end of the day, he had to be putting in extra hours. That's how it worked with every single person right there, from Bill Gates and everybody else. The second step, find a champion, be a cadet. The third step, wonderfully, is to get the trophy, but get back to treadmill. The other day, I was in my terrace, and we have in Nepal little black bats flying in the sky after 6 p.m. So there were bats flying in the sky, but I saw there's this little bat right there who used to get up, but he would start swinging and would get down, and then he had to swing all the way up. Same it is with life. When you have your mentors, you're running into your championship, you are going to get awards, you're going to get better. But at the same time, as you get up, remember you got up because you're flapping the wings, putting in that effort, right? But eventually, as you go ahead, sometimes we get ego and we stop putting our, we think that we are the flyers, we know how to fly, and we forget to flap our wings. I want to remind you that you need to be flapping your wings, get your trophy, but get back to treadmill. And that's how you become a champion. But among all these steps, there was this secret step, and there's this secret step that was right there in the second one. That when you become a champion, when you accomplish the right things, become a champion to a true cadet, help them out in their journey to the top. So that's what I had to share to you about how I started my company, how we work with schools to make education more fun. We dance, we laugh, we do a lot of activities, and that's how we help students learn better. At the same time, I run my TV show in the national television. I'm the youngest in South Asia. And with all of those things happening, I just want to let you know that you are a champion, but you're one step away from becoming a champion. With this, a quick reminder to everything we talk: give me a right hand, give me a high, right? Let's do it together. The first step, find your championship. Do it with me. Yep. Find your championship. Oh, yeah. The second step right there, get a champion and be a cadet. Get a champion and be a cadet. The third step, you lift the trophy, but get back to treadmill, right? And finally, the final step right there is that you become a champion to somebody else. Let's do it together, right? So finally, that's what I had to talk about. I'd love to take in your questions, but for the final time, let's do it together on a count of 3, 2, and 1. Who are we? Oh, yeah, we are champions. I'd love to take your questions in right now, and I'm glad to be with you.
Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Oh, yes, one in the chat by Diwa. Has your age ever been an obstacle in your career, and have you felt the need to work extra hard to prove yourself because of that or because of other adversities?
Well, that happens every single time, when you're young. The other day this happened, I was in an event, live event, physical one, and there was called. So there was a secretary who was handling for the events, and I went over there, and they'd be like, "Thank you for coming in. Has the speaker come with you?" So that happens with me all the time. When you're young, it's important to prove your credibility, and that's what happens every single time. How do you prove that you can add value? How do you prove that you can give it the right thing? But at the same time, Deva, most of the people many a times have a soft corner when you're starting early. If you see if someone's starting early, people want to help, but very often it also comes at an obstacle. What's this 18-year-old kid doing right here? That happens as well all the time. Any more questions?
I have a question. So I can see like, the sort of philosophy that you've created regarding, being a champion, uh, finding a like being a champ, what was it? Finding a championship, finding a champion and being a cadet, and then picking up the trophy, go to the treadmill. What do you think? Is there anything significant that's allowed you to condense everything into that philosophy? Like what's allowed you to consolidate that into those three steps?
That's right. Justin, I had the privilege and I'm very blessed with the opportunity of speaking to young people every single time, from Nepal to Canada to US to Morocco to all these different places. And I do coaching for young people right there as well. So when I talk to young teens, young teenager, my friends, I call them, one thing I find is that all of them aspire to have a lot of things, but also the reality is that 96% of the time, according to a London research, people don't achieve their dreams. It's because there's a lack of process into getting things started, that you want to do something but you don't know where to get started. So what ignited me to get this process right is because there is a pathway and specific way to go ahead in whatever direction you want. I ask my students when I do coaching, what are the different things you can do? How many of offices can you pop in saying that I'm a 16-year-old and I want to work for you for free, right? And that's how it works. I got into this process because I find it works really, really well to get young people started into their journey. Well, I guess we are into the time right now. As we get over here, uh, I'm taking a quick picture, if none of you mind, over there. It was an amazing time being with all of you, my wonderful champions right here from the US. I hope to see you guys again. I know many of you run your individual, uh, mm, you know, key club. I'd love to come in and speak to you people as well. So, on a count of three, two, and one, who are we? Champions. Oh, yeah. With this, thank you so much, everybody. It was amazing being with all of you. And thank you so much. Have a great time. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Marcus is currently a professor and director of the Global Studies Institute and the International Studies Program at Cal State Long Beach. And not only has he conducted research on relationships between macro-political institutional change, but he's also looked into popular perceptions and decentralization in Madagascar, Kenya, Israel, and Uganda. So on top of that, he's also served as a consultant for the World Bank, UNDP, US Department of State, UNICEF Madagascar, amongst various other NGOs around the world. Dr. Richard Marcus, we're really happy to have you. You can take it away.
Thank you again for the invitation. I greatly appreciate it. I learned yesterday that my daughter's going to be a freshman next year, and I learned yesterday that she'll be going to Wilson. So I'm sorry to say, I hope this is not the last time I ever get to join you, Jackrabbits, as a result of that. Anyway, so I'll speak today for just a few minutes on the power of knowledge, international education as a tool for global humanitarianism. And I'll draw on some of my own background and research as well. And I'll be very happy to take any questions you have as I start finishing up. So if that sounds okay, let me start with this picture. So hopefully you all see the slides in front of me. So I ask, what do you see in this picture? This picture was taken in the outskirts of Antananarivo, Madagascar. So for those of you that aren't sure where that is, Madagascar is the big island country that is off the east coast of the African continent. I've worked there, to age myself, since 1992. So for a very long time, I work in Madagascar more than any other country, although I get around. So I'd say in normal times, not COVID times, I usually travel internationally 4 or 5 times a year. Two of those times are generally in Madagascar. I've lived there at different points of my life, and I'm certainly there very frequently. I feel like I have a whole life there that I've not been back to in a year now, and it's very challenging. Anyway, so I took this picture on the outskirts of Antananarivo. Antananarivo is the capital, a large metropolitan city. And I asked you to look for a moment and say, what do you see? And we don't really have the time for that kind of interaction, but if I ask my students at the university that question, usually I get responses that are around poverty. I get responses that what is seen as the half-dressed young boy in the front of the picture, the girl in the back of the picture holding another child, etc. What I see is something very different. What I see is actually a great deal of wealth. One, that these kids are have come together in a form of unity. Two, you can see that some are wearing backpacks. They're actually coming from school, and they're coming from a relatively elite schooling environment. That these are kids that have a good shot of going to university, of having sort of professional lives. So it's important when looking at a picture like this, not to prejudge, but rather to think about within the context of norms within the country of what this means. And here's a picture of Soventrin, Madagascar, in this area, which while it is not by any means a wealthy town, it is, you know, a town with that is recognizable with to us in sort of living standards, in the sense of people drive cars, they have houses with normal roofs, electricity, cell phones, whatever, right? So let me make a few comments that are, let's say, more theoretical in nature, or definitional in nature, and I think it's going to help the conversation a little bit. In differentiating development, poverty, and humanitarianism. So if you're wanting to work with a humanitarian aid organization that focuses on some specific need, that's really different than a development agency, right? So I do a lot with the World Bank, for instance. That's a development agency. So how do we define these things differently? So international development doesn't have one definition. In fact, I teach a class called International Development at the university, and we spend an entire semester just trying to define it. but it does involve improvements in the material well-being and productive capacities of the society as a whole. It captures growth, distribution of resources, infrastructure, and the like. Poverty, on the other hand, is individual. So if I can quote from the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP says, poverty can be conceived as absolute or relative, as lack of income or failure to attain capabilities. It can be chronic or temporary. It sometimes is closely associated with inequity and is often correlated with vulnerabilities and social exclusion. So the UNDP goes on to say, well, you know, we can think about poverty as absolute poverty or relative poverty. And there are those that sort of challenge that dichotomy, and there's good reason for that challenge, but it's a helpful tool, I think, to think about that. So if you think you live in poverty, what does that mean? Right? Does it mean that on the one hand, in absolute poverty, you can't meet your basic needs? You don't have enough money to buy food or have regular access to clean water or things like that? Or does it mean relative poverty, where relative to other segments of society, you don't have very much? And so you struggle comparatively. And that leads to, which is itself problematic, because it leads to social exclusion, an inability to get jobs, things like that. So how do we differentiate them? And then that third category that I mentioned, and relative to this group, I think, is then humanitarian aid. So humanitarian aid is designed to relieve suffering in the short term and during emergencies. It's very interventionist, and it's very trying to solve a problem in the moment. As opposed to development aid, which is designed to alleviate long-term systematic issues. So if you're trying to build roads or electrical systems or I don't know, an educational system or things like that, that's development, right? It can take 2 decades to get anywhere, right? Humanitarian aid is meant to be effective immediately, right? With some particular need. You can have one without the other. They can be concurrent and collaborative, development aid and humanitarian aid, but they can also work at odds with one another. And so here's a good example. During food crises, when there's famine around the world, the first thing you want to do is people don't have food, we need to get them food, right? There's something very obvious about that. And so we talk a lot about that humanitarian aid of providing food to people who are starving. And that's really important. However, think about what free food does to a marketplace. It collapses it, right? That the impact of giving free food in a community can take literally years for a country to recover from, because if you in a local community can choose between the free food that's being given out by an aid agency versus going to a local marketplace in order to buy food, which you're going to do, you're going to take the free food, right? So the local markets begin to collapse when that happens, and that's very problematic, because again, if it's any extended period of time, then they can have a more permanent collapse of those local markets, and it can take literally years to rebuild the distribution networks for food, to bring people back into the sector as sellers of food, and the like. So you can see where, when not well balanced, they can actually work against one another, humanitarian aid and development aid. Okay, so we live in a rich country, arguably the world's richest country. So how should we think about humanitarian aid? Let me start with a quote from John F. Kennedy. So President Kennedy said in 1961, famously, to those people in the huts and villages of half the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever period is required, not because the communists might be doing it, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. This became the foundation of US aid overseas, and ultimately the creation of the US Agency for International Development, right? It's an obligation. He saw it as a promise that we, the wealthiest country, needed to do things for those, the poorest countries, which is a very noble idea. But let's think about this second quote for just a moment from Freire. Paulo Freire was a Brazilian scholar or activist who wrote a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And if I can quote from Freire, he said, "True generosity lies in striving so that these hands, whether of individuals or entire peoples, need to be extended less and less in supplication, so that more and more they become human hands which work and working transform the world. This lesson and this apprenticeship must come, however, from the oppressed themselves and from those who are truly solidary with them." So think about how different that is. It's saying, yeah, we don't really want your help like that. Like the way that John F. Kennedy said, of just providing help. Well, that doesn't help me very much, right? What we need is a form of assistance that makes it so that we're not asking for money, right? So that we're not supplicating. Because if we do, then ultimately we lose power. You have all the power over us because you're the ones with the money giving it to us. And it sets up a neo-colonial imbalance of power of sorts between those that have the money and those who don't. And many would argue that that's kind of where we're at today. That is that most of development aid has very serious strings attached. You have to do things in a certain way, and it is definitely perpetuating a balance of power of a certain sort. To the degree that even a country like Madagascar, for instance, what can be grown as crops in the country, what's its primary exports, things like that, are not dictated by the people of Madagascar through companies, and it's not dictated by the government of Madagascar. It's dictated by what, in particular, France and the US in that case, say they should be doing. That's a power issue. Okay, in this process, I also think it's very important to break from an African exceptionalism. We in the United States spend very little time in our education and our lives in general talking about Africa in any way. And as a result, we tend to construct a very particular view. Well, first, as if Africa is one country, which it is not. and also that African countries are like one place, right? And we think about conflict and poverty and the like, and it's just not the case. 54 countries can be very, very different, at the same time that African countries within themselves can be highly diverse, just in the US, just like in the US. There's wealthy and there's poor, there's different languages spoken, there's different belief structures, there's caste, there's class, there's ethnicity, there's religion, there's all these things that we experience in the United States as well. So it's important not to think about African countries as exceptional or different in some way, but as going through the same sorts of things that we go through in the US or French go through in France or the like. So to underscore this point, here's a picture I took in Antananarivo, in Madagascar again. And if you look at this picture, some of the things, if you look carefully at the picture, some things you can see, well, maybe we don't drive a whole lot of Peugeots in this country, but that's the French influence in Madagascar. But it's a similar sort of thing of people drive their cars, drive their scooters, whatever. It's a predominantly electrified city. The banner in the top left corner says Telma. Telma is the largest cell phone provider in the country, or one of the largest. Much like in the US, there's 3 large providers. Until fairly recently, Telma had an exclusive contract with Apple. So if you wanted to have an iPhone, it had to be on the Telma network, much like when Apple first came out with the iPhone in the US, it was only on AT&T, and then finally broke away. Very similar sorts of patterns. City Hall in Antananarivo, much like other city halls around the country, I'm sorry, around the world. There's the High Constitutional Court, which is the Supreme Court of Madagascar. They have a lovely old building, but a justice system that looks very familiar to you and to me, constructed starting with the Supreme Court and working its way down. But at the same time, it's a country of great poverty, so it lacks capacity. So we have this problem sometimes in the US as well, of be unable to rein in illicit activity, especially illicit economic activity. But in Madagascar, that's much greater. So this is illegal timber in northern Madagascar. That is an enormous industry in northern Madagascar, the felling of rainforests, rosewood in particular, hardwood, and for sale illicitly. Or where I spend a lot of my time doing research over the last 5 years or so is on the cattle industry in particular, and the networks for stealing cows. They're called the Halu networks, that they look a whole lot like drug cartel networks in Mexico or something, right? These very organized cartels around stealing cows in a rural areas, and then basically whitewashing them in order to sell them in a very strong international beef industry. So Madagascar provides a lot of beef to Europe. If you can whitewash the cows after sale, then it means that you can have a successful illicit industry, right? So you have these challenges going on the one hand because there's a lack of capacity, but a normal, sort of more normal to us kinds of things going on at the same time. I want to make this point that that's everywhere in poorer countries. This is in Dakar, Senegal, where on the one hand, it's this, this major metropolitan city, very international. There's a world-class university, but on the other hand, there's still subsistence fishing going on, right? This is in the city, actually, of Dakar. And to my point about poverty from before, that it's actually the picture on the left with the cars is taken in Dakar. The picture on the right is taken in Paris. And I bring out this point just in order to say that poverty is everywhere and wealth is everywhere. Likewise, comparing Nairobi and Los Angeles, the very stately looking home on the left is a neighborhood of Nairobi that looks a whole lot like Beverly Hills, whereas on the right, it's a house in South LA, right, like we have in both places. What about how we act as consumers or as economic agents? So how did Americans spend their stimulus checks? As you hopefully know, at the beginning of the pandemic, anyone making under a certain amount of money received a stimulus check from the government, right? So how did they spend the money? Overwhelmingly, those, at least in the lower and middle income groups in the US, spent money on things like food, durable goods, and debt. So that makes sense. If you don't have money, you lost your job because of the pandemic, you need to buy food, so you buy food, right? It makes perfect sense. And you've accrued debt because housing is so expensive, especially in Los Angeles, or in greater Los Angeles. So you ring up debt and you have to pay it down. So that's how people spend money. But let's compare this to a moment. I did this study in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where there was one-time payments to, in this case, people that worked in the mines, in mining mines in southern Congo. And what did they do with their one-time checks that they got when they lost their jobs? Well, the answer is almost exactly the same thing, right? That is, they spent their money on food and on paying down debt. And then after that, on helping family and things like that, right? So the way in which you, if you don't have your needs met, you spend, is exactly the same in southern Congo as it is in Los Angeles, right? Okay, so what are the consequences of doing aid poorly? If you're not thinking about the sameness, if you're creating the exceptionalism, what are the consequences? Well, first, you fictionalize real people's suffering. You make them unpeople. You disempower them. You see much more misuse of funds by large international organizations. There's a tendency to cut recipients out of negotiations. There's a marginalization of stakeholders in negotiations. So for instance, you're a large non-government organization, you're doing humanitarian aid, you're trying to do the right thing, and you're like, I know because I have my master's from Johns Hopkins University or something, right? I know what the right answer is. You in Madagascar, in Congo, in Chad, and wherever, don't. So I'm going to make these decisions. And if you're not saying the same thing I am, I'm just going to cut you out of the decision-making process. As a result, aid often does more harm than good, whether due to oversight, greed, or the momentum of global wealth and power disparity. Humanitarian aid is intended to reduce poverty and suffering, yet it is clear that it often compounds political weaknesses, stifles enterprises, and makes governments less accountable to their citizens. Foreign aid, more generally, has helped lead to one-party states, neocolonial structures of domination, underdevelopment, development that serves global or Western markets, you and me, as opposed to the country where that takes place. It often supports unnecessary bureaucracy and policies that are unpopular in a country. And foreign aid often reinforces social inequality, authoritarianism. So let me give one recent, really recent example, and that's COVID-19 aid in Madagascar. I've been directly involved with this, and I'm going to show you some data that's not yet published. So, but just to make this point. So, there's $650 million of foreign aid pouring into Madagascar right now for COVID-19 relief. Enormous amount of money in a country of that size. But there's been 285 deaths from the pandemic since the beginning in Madagascar. In Madagascar, COVID-19 is not seen as a thing, right? It's just, in comparison to other things going on, it is so small, right? But the United States has Madagascar at a very high level of COVID-19 with all these warnings about going there. Like 285 deaths, that's like an afternoon in California, right? So this is the entire country since the beginning of the pandemic. So there's this disjuncture between what we, the United States, or the World Health Organization, or international agencies think about COVID-19 in Madagascar in comparison to what people in Madagascar think about COVID-19 in Madagascar. So I've been doing panel surveys starting in April, but just really quickly since we don't have a lot of time here. So just looking at August and November, have you seen more or less donor assistance? The answer is consistently less. Despite $650 million of spending, the answer is less. On what things do you think donors need to spend their money on? Food, we need food. What are they spending their money on? COVID supplies, right? In the past month, have things become financially easier or harder in your household? Well, overwhelmingly harder, despite $650 million in aid. Do you think in general there are more people in your community struggling for enough money and resources to survive? That is the extreme poor in your community. Overwhelmingly, yes. What are the needs created? Once again, the need is we need food. The second need is we need health. What is the money being spent on? It's being on COVID relief, and it's now being rolled into vaccination planning. Have you seen an increase in the price of rice, the food staple? Well, overwhelmingly less, and the cost of rice has gone crazy. So we see this real disjuncture with the $650 million between what does COVID really mean versus what is it that we're really concerned about within this country. And right now there is no dialogue going on. Okay, just 2 more slides for you, I think it is. From ideas to actions. So the first thing is looking to undo African exceptionalism, right? And understand that people are going through similar things to what we go through. That we need to seek to help a place of privilege, avoiding the aid of oppression. That is, we have to recognize that we are in a position of privilege. Even if you're not from a family that you think you're from privilege, you are in this kind of relationship. And it's important to recognize that. We need to engage stakeholders equally, always. This thing of I went to UCLA, I went to Johns Hopkins, whatever, and I have the answers. We need to put that aside, right? And say all stakeholders need to be at the table, always. International education crises. I would argue as an international educator that we are in an era of international education crisis, despite being in an age of globality. Never in the history of the world have we seen the level of globalization that we see today. But ironically, as we engage more globally, we tend to know less. We tend to understand less. US international knowledge of the citizenry, US citizenry has declined. US global competencies have declined. And as a scholar within, as the director of the Global Studies Institute at Cal State Long Beach, I've done a lot of work on our global competencies as students. So what can we do? Well, recognize our own privilege, as I said before. Recognize the privilege in others and the social complexity it brings, including in recipient countries. That is, in poor countries too, there are wealthy people and poor people, and you can recognize and have to recognize that social complexity. Learning languages. I can't say this enough times, how important it is to learn languages, not because other people can't speak English, but because there's no way to understand the perspective of others if you don't. So I work in Swahili and French and Malgache in Spanish because I'll learn languages, not because I'm great at languages, but because I just think it's incredibly important to understand the perspective of others and our cultural sameness. We need to seek transcultural competency. That is, to understand how culturally we move across places in our similarities and our differences, and to build intercultural skills. That is, the skills to be able to land someplace you've never been in your life, but to pick up on and understand cultural traits within that society very rapidly, so that you can adapt and not act as an American in that place, but rather act as an American coming to understand that place and the people in it. Learn history, just besides our One World History course that we take in, 10th grade? Forgetting, which I have a lot of criticism of in a lot of different ways, but we do very, very little to understand the world whatsoever. The last time I read a world history textbook for California high schools was about 3 years ago. And one of the things that I remembered about it most was the US and Europe were all within subject areas like democracy or things like that. And it was we, and then there was a separate chapter for Africa and for Asia, and it was they, right? Well, that's a starting point, that's a problem. And I hope it's not still true, but we need to learn history and we need to go well beyond that one class. Reading philosophy and literature, particularly from the recipient perspective. I mean, how many of you could even name an African author? and let alone having read an African author, because the perspectives that you get, both philosophically and in terms of construction of literature and knowledge, is really very different. To help understand other people in other parts of the world, reading philosophy and literature of those places is helpful. And then finally, engage, listen, respond. Don't talk at people, right? If we want to move from ideas to action, it means engaging with others, listening to others, responding to others as partners and as equals with that great understanding I was talking about before, as opposed to making a decision in our bubble about what we think is important in terms of aid, humanitarian development or otherwise, and saying, I'm going to do this for you. I will stop it there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Marcus. Do we have any questions from anybody in the audience for Mr. Marcus here?
In the chat. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say in the chat, there's one asking, which has been more valuable in your career, your education, or your experience?
I would say both, and I'm not being facetious or fence sitting in any way, but they provide different things. That is, I don't think I would have the same experiences if I didn't have the education, both because I wouldn't be given them, but also because I wouldn't understand them in the same way. So, but on the other hand, if you have an education, you don't get experience, then you don't know how to apply it. So they do necessarily go together, they're interwoven.
Thank you. And we also have, I think, Aishna raised her hand. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah. I was just wondering if there was, like, since you mentioned the California textbook and just like American schooling, if there's like anywhere else in the world that maybe conveys the message better, just of that, like the world history better.
That's a really good question. So it depends where, right? So like in Madagascar, for instance, they went through these massive reforms a few years ago, and I think they're frankly doing it much better than we are, in that they're bringing in sort of that dominant sort of old school French way of looking at the world, but at the same time have an integration with Malgache thought that's important. The reforms in France, I think, have moved France ahead in a lot of ways, in the way that they've handled it. And the UK has not really, as far as I know. Germany's been doing a much better job as well. Oh, and I should make sure to point out Dubai, that they're not done yet, but what I was there, I don't know, 6 months before the pandemic began maybe, for a conference, and we were talking about this. So they made a determination that they're going to radically reform the equivalent of K-12 education, and that includes the language in which it's taught, and they want it to be truly by a trilingual education. And in order to do so, they needed to rethink how they handle the relationship between Arabic and English. And so, being Dubai and having all the money in the world, they found the people out there that they wanted to lead this. One was in Egypt and one was in the UK. And they offered them money to come to Dubai. They both said no. The response of I was, you write down how much money it's going to take to come here and we will pay it. And they convinced them both to come, and they now have a plan. I don't know where they're at the execution of it, but I have seen the plan that they put together for how to rethink history, yes, but also, again, building of global competencies, the interwoven nature of language in education and the like. One last comment, and that is, our system has it available to us. It's just not part of the mandatory constructions of education. You have to choose university as well. It's there for you. It's just not part of mandatory aspects of education. So as you opt into courses, you can choose that. It's just, again, it's not going to come from those relatively few mandatory courses. Last comment on that, and that is, I do the AP World History is far superior to the not because it's AP or that I'm advocating AP, but because they've gone through much more recent reforms of the curriculum, because it has to comply. They within the last 5 years have done a major reset of how world history is taught, whereas for the other curriculum it has not been.
All right, thank you so much. I don't know if there's anybody with any questions. Oh. We do have one. I think we'll make this the last question from the chat. You mentioned a bit about African authors. Is there anyone you'd recommend?
Of course, I said then put myself on the spot, right? Well, the starting point would be there are these grand authors that have gained great notoriety. So Chinua Achebe or Wole Soyinka would be examples. I'm sorry, Nuruddin Farah, the Somali author Nuruddin Farah. These are the grand authors of the continent, and I would start there. And even if the material is a little bit dated, so Chinua Achebe and Wole Soyinka, for instance, goes so far in helping understand the construction of the neo-colonial construction of the African continent and its countries, right? So I would start there. But there are some amazing current authors. If you're interested, you can shoot me an email and I'll be happy to send you 4 or 5 current authors, under 40 years old today, authors that have been doing some really interesting work on identity in Africa, on religion and politics, on like all these kinds of things to try to help understand it. Gender identity, that's a big one right now.
All right. Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Marcus. You're free to drop any of your contact information in the chat.
Our next guest speaker is Brian Spunt. He's a serial entrepreneur with a passion for living a balanced and full life. He finds the same level of commitment to his health, hobbies, and relationships as he does as his business endeavors. He believes that is the key to sustainable success and long-term happiness. He is currently the Chief Executive Officer at Seek Discomfort. He sits on the advisory board at PopSockets, and he is the co-founder / Chief Smiles Officer at the Big Smiles Program, a nonprofit art program that works with children's hospitals in Los Angeles. Brian, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Thomas. And good to put a face to the name. And good to see everyone here. And thanks so much for having me. I'm super grateful and honored to be chatting with you guys. I was actually in Key Club when I was in high school, and I think I volunteered like 300 hours through Key Club in high school. So like I said, just really cool to see all of you here, and grateful to be able to chat a little bit about my story and kind of what I've learned in the short amount of years I've been on the earth, and just share a bit about my story, like I said. So I'll give a bit of background on kind of how I got to where I am, and then I'll talk through a few talking points that Thomas thought might be interesting for all of you, and then we can kind of open it up to any questions or just discussion that you guys want to have. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and I ended up going to Boulder, Colorado for university, and I was studying business strategy and entrepreneurship. And I randomly ended up in a philosophy class one day, and my philosophy professor was the inventor of a product, and at the time a small company called PopSockets. So this goofy thing that's on the back of a lot of people's phones. And I was really interested in the product and thought it was a really cool idea. And I got involved with PopSockets. I kind of took a leap of faith, and I dropped out of school, and I helped David, the founder, launch the brand back in 2014. And so I still am involved in PopSockets today and sit on the board at the advisory board as a shareholder. And that was a really amazing experience in entrepreneurship. And then I came back home to LA, and like Thomas mentioned, I started what's called the Big Smiles program. And it's a therapeutic art program. We work with children's hospitals in Los Angeles, and we put on these therapeutic painting sessions. And so we bring in canvases, acrylic paint, squeegee, stamps, stickers, music, tarps, and really just it's all about helping kids and their families in the hospital just have a bit of relief from everything that's going on in that chaotic world. And so we kind of just hang out and smile and get messy with paint and hang out with the kids. And so I've been doing that for a few years now, and we've probably put in a couple hundred hours of volunteering in the hospital. We've brought over 100 of our friends in to volunteer with us and experience that. And we've maybe made, over 1,000 paintings with kids in the hospital. So that's been a real light in my life, and has shown me to be really grateful for my health and a lot of other things. And from that, I now got into where I am now as the CEO of Seek Discomfort. And Seek Discomfort was founded by Yes Theory, which is a YouTube channel. And they just crossed 6 million subscribers this year on YouTube. And we really believe that the best things in life and the most meaningful connections exist outside of your comfort zone. So we try and encourage people to try new things, meet new people, and ultimately go after their wildest dreams. That's kind of the whole idea here. And so this is like one of our shirts that I'm wearing, and we make clothing that just kind of serves as a reminder of this philosophy. This one was part of like a collection we made called Seek Connection that was all about trying to connect people through clothing. So this says "You are enough" and has a whole paragraph about that. But I came here today to talk a little bit about, like Thomas mentioned, kindness, mindset, different things like that, being authentic to yourself. So I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the exponential power of kindness. And I don't think, like most things in life, I don't believe that kindness is a thing of multiples. Like I don't think, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. I think kindness is exponential. And when you invest in living a kind life and helping others and being altruistic, the good that can come from that it's hard to calculate. And at Yes Theory and Seek Discomfort, we believe in this concept of the ripple effect. And, one good deed, what that can inspire down the road. And I think a good example of this is when Yes Theory was started, they were inspired by this show on MTV called The Buried Life. And The Buried Life were these group of guys, and they went out and basically wanted to conquer 100 different things on their dream bucket list. And when they started this project, they kind of thought to themselves, like, maybe this is a little bit selfish. Maybe we're just going after the things that we want to do, but we're not necessarily helping other people. And what they did, found after years of doing this, one of their founders, Ben Nempton, he's an international speaker, and he goes and talks about this, is that actually by going after their dreams and going after the things that they believed in life and really leading by example, they inspired others just through osmosis. People saw what they were doing and were inspired by that. And that inspired people to go chase after their own dreams. And so I think kindness is really similar. And by going and being kind to someone else, you not only make your day better, you make that person's day better, but you inspire that person to then be kind to others. People who see you being kind might go be kind to others as well. So I think that idea of the ripple effect is really important. And that one act of kindness, you never know how much positive impact that can have in the world. Just like when The Buried Life started, they didn't know that they would go on to inspire Yes Theory, and Yes Theory would go on to, have 6 million subscribers on YouTube. And, if you look at Yes Theory's catalogs, their total video views is, more than double the population of the United States. And so you look at that one ripple of what these guys did and what that turned into. I think kindness is very similar, where you never know where one act of kindness will take you. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is kind of my view on life is that it's a long game. And there's this saying that nice guys or nice girls finish last. And I think it couldn't be further from the truth. I think, what I've kind of tweaked that to in my own reality is that nice guys or nice girls finish first. It's just a long race. And so sure, in life, you can get ahead by taking a shortcut or, having maybe poor character or stepping on people to make your way to the top, but it's really not sustainable. And I always tell people that I talk to that come to me for advice, patience, authenticity, and knowing who you are as a person and staying true to that, having strong character, promoting kindness in the world. These are all things that if you do this day in and day out, you're a good person, you show up, you work hard, and you give back, there's really no way to lose. I can't tell you when the big victories will come in your life, but I can guarantee you that they will. And if you continue to just focus on the long game and do the right thing and be a good person, I believe there's no way to lose. So I think that's something that I've always really focused on in my life. And it's kind of like a snowball effect, you know, it's just momentum builds. And if you continue to do the work day in and day out, it just gradually grows and grows, and bigger opportunities come, and more things come your way. And so I think the long game is really, really important. And then another thing is the idea of choosing love over fear. So at Yes Theory and Seek Discomfort, we have a bunch of mantras that we try to live our lives by, and they kind of serve as guiding, you know, a guide for us. And one of them is love over fear. And I think too often in society, where our default mechanism is to choose fear in life sometimes. And I think, you know, one of my favorite books that I read is the Dalai Lama, and it's The Art of Happiness. And he talks about how at the end of the day, everyone is the same. We're all human beings. We all live on this planet, and we're all looking for some sort of happiness in life, whatever that might mean to the individual. And we're all trying to alleviate suffering, pain, and sadness. And so when you put those glasses on and you view the world through those lenses, you can start to realize that we all are the same, right? We're just trying to find some sort of happiness. We're trying to not suffer and not find sadness in life. And you can see, you know, maybe we don't quite understand the decision that someone made, but if we know that they made that decision based on trying to find happiness or trying to alleviate pain and suffering in their life, then it can be more relatable. And, you know, people might not look the same as you. They might not come from the same background as you, or the same traditions, or the same culture, anything like that. But I urge you, and, you know, I always try in my life to, when that fear mechanism comes up, just to choose for fear and start with that basis in mind. I think it's a really good place to start, and it's a really good way to live your life and connect with people and all of that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to throw, like, you know, I think we have maybe 20 minutes for this chat. So I'm going to throw like a few concepts out there to you guys, kind of some things that I've learned over the years and I live in my own life. And then we can chat at the end. And if anything was more interesting than not, we can dive deeper, or you can ask questions. So the other one I wanted to talk about is the kindness gap. And so when I started the Big Smiles program, I realized that there was this big gap in the amount of people that wanted to give back, and especially the amount of young people that wanted to give back, and the amount of people that were actually doing the work and actually giving back. And I thought it was super interesting to me, you know, if there were so many people that genuinely wanted to do it, and I believe that they did, why weren't they doing it? And so, you know, one of the missions at the Big Smiles program was to try and close that gap. And how could we make volunteering so easy that people, you know, could just jump in, and it wasn't, they didn't have to jump through so many hoops. They didn't have to go through many challenges. You know, if we were talking on a Wednesday, I could get them into the hospital on a Saturday to volunteer, kind of a thing. But a buddy of mine, his name is Houston Kraft. He wrote a book called Deep Kindness. And Houston is an absolute legend. He has promoted his whole life and his career to promoting kindness in the world. And he basically realized that, you know, kindness is not easy. And sure, you know, walking around the world and you're having a good day and you open the door for someone, or you smile at the barista that made you your coffee, or whatever it might be, those little acts, they're great for the world, but that's not really what kindness is all about. Kindness is about on the days when you don't feel good, right? Or when the days when being kind maybe is out of your way or inconvenient, do you still choose to be kind? And do you still choose to add that kind of loving energy into the world? And so, you know, Houston talks about this story all the time, which I think really paints a good picture of this. And he met this lady once, her name was Helga. And Helga was, unfortunately, got some news that her father was pretty sick. And so she jumped on a plane and was going to visit her father to, see how he was doing. And when Helga landed to see her father, she had a voicemail. She checked the voicemail and unfortunately found out that her dad had passed away. And this was just tragic for Helga, obviously, as it would be to really anyone. And she just crumbled, and she was in the airport and she stumbled over to a wall and just completely broke down, and she was crying. And she was pretty hysterical for an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours in the airport. And you got to imagine in 3 hours sitting in the airport, there's maybe a couple thousand people that pass by. Everyone's in a rush. Everyone's trying to make it to the gate. Everyone has their own agenda. And she talked about how not a single person stopped to help and just ask her if she was okay. And I think, when you look at kindness, it's really like, think of that story with Helga, and are you going to stop when it's inconvenient and you have another agenda for your day, but you see an opportunity to help? All the time in my life, and I'm totally guilty of this. I'll see an opportunity where I say, ooh, maybe I could go help that person over there. Maybe there's an opportunity to spread a little bit of kindness or altruism or help. And fear, doubt, self-consciousness comes into the frame, and you're like, what if they don't want to be helped? Or, what if I embarrass myself, or all of these different things? And I kind of urge you to think of this story of Helga and extend a helping hand, even when it might not be easy. I think trying to lessen this gap of kindness and get more people to be kind, even when it's not easy, I think will do a lot for the world. And then the last piece here, Tom wanted me to talk a little bit about mindset. And so I think in my life, and very recently in my life too, I've really invested a lot of time and energy into this, is the idea of balance in life. And so I think balance can mean a lot of different things depending on kind of what you care about in life. But I actually, in that same book, The Art of Happiness with the Dalai Lama, he talks about this concept of literally like make a chart and write down, okay, on the left side here, or I guess for you that might be the right side, whatever. On this side, write down like what are the things that make you feel good and make you happy. And then on the right side, or this side for you, write down the things that cause you pain and suffering and sadness in your life. And for me, some of these things are like trivial, right? It's like, oh, I want my room to be clean because that makes me feel good and it starts my day well. Or I want to wake up early, or I want to make dinner with my fiance from multiple times a week, and all of those different things. And so I encourage you guys to write down this list, right? Just spend some time and think about, what are all of the things that make you happy in life? What are the things that cause you pain and suffering? And then how do you focus on really going after the things that make you happy and scheduling them into your life and really prioritizing them? And then how do you focus on the things that make you suffer or cause you pain and sadness? Maybe it's toxic relationships. Maybe it's little things, right? Like, oh, I wish I could not be in my car as much. So maybe you walk a little bit more, or different things like that. I really encourage you guys to like understand what are the things that make you feel good and don't make you feel good, and then really try to find that balance. And so I have I created like my own kind of formula, and it's happiness equals discipline plus mindfulness. And so having the discipline to understand, okay, what are the things that make me happy? What are the things that don't make me happy? And then having that discipline to actually go after the things that make you happy in life and schedule them into your weeks and schedule them into your months and into your years. And the discipline to not go after the things that don't make you happy, right? Like for me, I love dessert as much as the next, but it just doesn't make me happy if I eat it all the time. So that's like a discipline thing for me, to just not eat dessert all the time. So do you have the discipline to go after that? And then the mindfulness component is, for me, this is meditation, or this is yoga, or this is surfing, or anything like that. But, how do you, if you have the discipline to bring good things into your life, there's so much chatter that we have and activation that we have in our minds, through social media and, TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and Robinhood and all of these different stimulus that we have coming in all day long, you need to find a way to just kind of like settle the chatter, because, if you have these beautiful things that you've brought into your life through being disciplined and they're things that make you super happy, you want to be present when they happen. And so to me, it's, again, happiness is, the addition of discipline and mindfulness. So that's a bit about like my balance. I love business and entrepreneurship and this journey I'm on with Seek Discomfort and Yes Theory, but I also have like 1,000 hobbies. I love surfing. I love yoga. I love mountain biking and camping and cooking and so many things. And so to really try and find that balance for me, I kind of think about it as like lifestyle architecture. So no one can really tell you what your life should look like. You guys are all young, you're in high school, I think, all of you, and you can really design the life that you want that's really going to make you happy. And it doesn't have to be traditional. It doesn't have to follow the norm. I really, just encourage all of you to just go after what you believe in. Write down your lists of things that feel good in your life and prioritize them and be selfish with them. And then in turn, by following your dreams and going after the things you believe in and having that balance and fulfillment and happiness in your life, you'll inspire others to do the same. And I really just am grateful to be chatting with you guys. And, I think you guys are in a wonderful place that you're in high school and you're already thinking about giving back to others and having strong character and being altruistic. And so I would just say, keep doing all of that. And Thomas, if we want to open it up to any questions, or if anyone wants to talk more about any of those topics, I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah, definitely. Does anyone have any questions for Brian? What's the most rewarding project you've worked on?
Yeah, I think there's a few, but I think probably the Big Smiles program was such a light in my life. It started really small. It started just as an idea that was, can we just go into the hospital, me and my business partner, and bring, some paints and supplies and paint with the kids and see what happens. And to see over the years how it's grown and how many people have gotten into the hospital has been really incredible. So I think that's been something really rewarding in my life. I think as an entrepreneur, it really is rewarding when I see me and the team putting in so much hard work and then seeing the kind of the fruits of our labor when we launch a new project or a new product or a marketing piece, and to see how it reacts with our community and how it impacts people's lives. I think that's pretty special. And then I talked to a lot of people on my team about, me and my girlfriend actually just got engaged 2 days ago. And I talk about my relationship with my now fiance, which is kind of crazy, but I talk about my relationship with my fiance as something that I'm very proud of and is super fulfilling in my life. And I think that speaks to the balance of, being grateful for business and philanthropy, but also really proud of, my relationship with my dad and my friends and my fiance.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think someone said congrats, or a few people did. So thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
What books about entrepreneurship or mindfulness do you recommend reading?
So the books that I love, I honestly, to be honest, hate reading. So I don't have 100 books to recommend to you guys, but I've read The Art of Happiness over and over again. That's the one with the Dalai Lama. I think that's an incredible read for anyone who's just looking to find that, like, what is going to make me happy in life. And that's a great starting point. Essentialism is a great book. It talks all about the idea of don't get too distracted in life, and focused effort on the things that matter will kind of propel you forward. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. That's an incredible book about like when you build a business, you know, like for Seek Discomfort, you know, we don't make clothing. When I introduced it to you guys, I said, we believe that the best things in life are outside your comfort zone, right? Oh, and then how we do that is we make product that reminds people of our philosophy and all of that. So Start with Why is an incredible book that just switches your mind into how to build community and businesses. And then honestly, I just listened to on tape Green Lights with my fiance. It's the Matthew McConaughey book. And if you listen to it on tape, he actually narrates it. And it's like this incredible, you're almost like listening to a movie of him. And it's really just an inspirational story that he has of kind of carving your own path. So those are kind of my recommendations there. And then my buddy's book, if you're into it, Deep Kindness. So this is the one that I referenced. This is really cool. It's you know, Houston is a great guy. So I would absolutely recommend Deep Kindness as well.
Thank you. What motivated you to take the risk to drop out of college and continue working with PopSocket?
Yeah, so I at the time I was in college, you know, I had been interning for PopSockets for 6 months. I was in the business school, and I was the president of my fraternity at the time, and I was feeling like totally overwhelmed, but I was really feeling inspired by PopSockets, and I just felt like there was so much potential with this business. And I was going to school to be an entrepreneur, and here was like a real life opportunity to be an entrepreneur. I was like, you know, and like maybe this is the right thing to do. And I called my dad one day, and my dad is a mentor of mine, lucky enough. And I was talking to him, and I just said, I feel so overwhelmed, but I have all this stuff going on, but I really feel like there's an opportunity with PopSockets. And my dad, kind of being a forward thinker and untraditional, he said, have you ever thought about taking some time off of school? And I paused for a minute. I said, I didn't think about that. I hung up the phone. I called my counselor and said, hey, I'm taking a year off of school. And so I think, you know, more and more with education, like I see nothing wrong with education. I think it's great. And I learned so much, and you meet people and you build social skills and you build your network, and college is incredible. But I think there's so much opportunity to get like all of the barriers to entry in the real world and business and nonprofit or art or music or whatever you're inspired by. All of the barriers to entry have been just eliminated almost entirely. You know, you see kids who are creating TikTok pages. A buddy of mine, Simon, created this TikTok page like last year called Keep It Wholesome. And he built it to like 1 million followers, like literally so quickly. And now he's like got a clothing brand, and he's still in college. I'm like, I'm really inspired by that guy, you know, every week. And so I think like, you know, I always encourage people, when there's a leap of faith that you have to take, can you take it from jumping off a cliff and not knowing if there's water below you, to like stepping off a curb, you know, with maybe your eyes closed. It's still scary, but you know that the risk is much reduced. And so an example of this would be like, say you want to say you're in a job that's like a 9 to 5 that you don't really like, and you're super inspired by photography. While you're at your 9 to 5 job, on the weekends and, you know, mornings before your job or nights after your job, whatever is the time when you feel most productive, can you start to build a portfolio? Can you start to get a freelance client or two? Can you start to lessen the gap of like, you know, if you do that for 3 or 4 months or 6 months or a year, by the time a year comes around and you're working your 9 to 5 job, you might have 3 to 5 freelance clients, enough money coming in to pay your rent and your groceries and your gas and all your overhead. And, you know, quitting your job isn't a jump off a cliff anymore. It's a step off a curb, because you know that you can pay your bills. So I encourage you, if you have an opportunity, how do you mitigate the risk? Because, you know, I'm all for the entrepreneurial story of, you know, the diehard entrepreneurs that dropped everything, and, you know, they lived in their parents' basement and they ate top ramen for 3 years straight. But like, that's not that fun. You know, it's like, I'll just tell you right now, like that's very stressful, and it's hard to find balance in your life when that's where you're at. And so if you can mitigate the risk, it just becomes an easier decision to make. Sometimes you have to take a massive leap of faith. Before Seek Discomfort, I was working at a company called Elwood Clothing, which makes like men's streetwear clothing. And I left that company after 3 years because I just felt like there was something more for me that was going to make me feel more fulfilled. I know what it was. So that was like more of a leap of faith into the unknown. And then I found my way into Seek Discomfort. And, you know, I've been friends with the Yes Theory guys for a while, and that opportunity came to me. So there are times to just say, you know, F it, I'm going to just take a real risk here because I really believe in this in my heart, and I'm going to do anything I can to make it work. And then there's times when like, it's like, why not mitigate the risk and make it less scary? So that would kind of be my advice there.
Thank you. I believe we have time for one more question. This one by Bethany. Who's your inspirational person?
So I think, you know, I find inspiration from, I don't know that I have one person. I think I find inspiration from a lot of people. You know, my dad, my fiance, my friends. Like I said, I just brought up Simon. He's inspirational to me. My buddy Houston Kraft, who does this kindness, is super inspirational to me. The Yes Theory guys. Like, I think if you can find inspiration all over the place, I mean, it's everywhere. There's people doing incredible things all over the place. And I think back to the ripple effect, like people are doing small things all over the place that you can pull inspiration from if you just have your eyes open, you know? And so I think like, I also love the saying like walk around the world with big ears and a small mouth. And so like, I like love to just learn from anyone, you know, and just, my dad learned from his mentor, actually. Like you can learn so much from anyone. His mentor was very, very successful entrepreneur, and you know, he was worth, I think, over 100 million or something crazy. And he would walk in to a project, and you know, he would have a conversation with the gardener, and he would be just as engaged with the gardener as he would with the CEO of the project. And so I think like there's inspiration all over the world, people, nature. I get really inspired just by being out in nature. I think whenever I need, like if I'm designing clothing or really needing to come up with like a unique and novel idea, my strategy is usually like, let's sit down and get like really analytical about it and like brainstorm and write notes and work on my whiteboard and get visual. And then I need to step away and go get into nature on a hike or a mountain bike ride or a surf. And then that's when ideas and inspiration start kind of flying in for me. So I think it's that combination of, again, it's like discipline and mindfulness. Like, how do you put in the disciplined work? And then like, how do you step away and just like let the thoughts go away and kind of get inspired? So that would kind of, that would be my inspo there.
All right, thank you. If there's no other questions, we're on launch into the connecting the topics. Thank you, Brian, for your inspirational and thoughtful answers to our questions. I really appreciated you being here and taking the time to jump on our call and give a little bit of inspiration and kindness to our attendees.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me, Thomas. It was great to meet you. And I'm going to throw my email in the chat here. It's spunt@seekdiscomfort.com. So I'm happy to, if you guys are interested in anything I talked about, or 6 months down the road have a question or anything, consider me a friend, a mentor, a contact, anything you want, send me an email. I'll give you my phone number. You can shoot me a text. I'm happy to chat with you guys about anything, and just wish you luck along your journey.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Talk to you guys soon.